Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 461. Then you bring him over, because I just have a task to arrange for him. After half an hour, Penguin Penny brought the surrendered Dragon City intelligence personnel to the Howling Castle. Li Chao, originally from Shadu, moved to Longcheng with his family, graduated from Longcheng Intelligence Agency Luo Jiegong, representative of the 28th Outstanding Graduates. Good at disguising, sneaking, and having good communicative skills, proficient in short and medium-range thermal weapons. These are all your information, right? Link sat on the sofa and talked. The person standing in front of Link was already sweating profusely at this moment, his back was soaked with sweat, and the drops of sweat could be clearly seen on his forehead and cheeks. The heart beats violently, as if to break free from the chest every time. Li Chao didn't dare to look up at Link, his eyes fixed on the colorful carpet on the ground. Guru. Li Chao swallowed, and stammered, "Yes, that's right. The shadow of the famous tree. Link is now one of the most powerful people on the Waste Saturn, and 11 points of influence can be called the top of the Waste Saturn. The legendary experience in him can't be said even one day and one night. Facing such a person who can decide his life or death by raising his hand, Li Chao trembled. Penguin was holding a small coffee drink, as if the whole thing had nothing to do with it. Link has become accustomed to this kind of attitude. He didn't think there was any problem at all. He asked directly, "You are trying to contact the intelligence personnel, do you want to join Shadu? I think your resume when you were in Dragon City is very beautiful. With your strength, as long as you stay patiently, what can't you get in Dragon City?" Li Chao was extremely nervous, and his voice was shaking. "It just looks like this on the outside. The people of Longcheng seem to be tolerant, but they are actually the most exclusive. There are many small groups. Don't think I am a representative of outstanding graduates, but because I was born in Shadu, everything is inferior. Graduates, now all have taken up leadership positions, only I am still at the grassroots level. Moreover, Dragon City's intelligence department in Shadu also excuses that I was born in Shadu, and I do the work, and they take credit. The most hateful thing is, I heard them secretly talk some time ago because of my origin, so I have to be suppressed all the time. And they are still negotiating to deduct my bonus and reduce subsidies for immediate family members. The most unbearable thing for me was that my mother had a sudden attack some time ago. The family wrote to me and asked me to send some money back. However, the superiors of this group of corpse-bit vegetarian meals withheld the letter because they were afraid of delaying the plan in Shadu. The news of my mother's death was also blocked. These are all I learned after investigating." Li Chao clenched his fists, his muscles were tense, tears came from his eyes, and he fell on the carpet. "So I want to join Shadu, I want to retaliate against Dragon City, at least none of the people in the Shadu intelligence office can escape." Li Chao looked up for the first time, and Link saw pain and despair in his eyes, as well as monstrous anger. "You have completed the screening and assessment, and we will send someone to verify what you said. Now, I announce that you are officially a member of Shadidco. Welcome home." Link slowly stretched out his hand to help Li Chao up. Link has reason to believe in Li Chao's surrender, because the system now shows that Li Chao's loyalty is as high as 95, and he only needs to invest 5 more points to synthesize. There is such a high level of loyalty at the first meeting. Either this person is a master agent and acting master who has deceived Penny, Dai Yi, and him, or he is really in a grudge. Li Chao's information link has taken the time to investigate, and the level 20 intermediate agent has the ability to match the information provided by Penny. In addition, the task assigned by Link has been completed after the contact, which proved his determination to surrender. Lin Ke said welcome home and directly broke Li Chao's defenses, tears shed on the spot. At first, Shadu performed the task. Although Li Chao was discriminated against in Longcheng because of his background, he was compared with the chaotic Shadu. As an expatriate intelligence agent in Longcheng, his status and treatment were fair. Not proud, but at least there will be no resistance. However, with the rise of Link, Shadu successively created a new era. The underlying environment and the overall situation have been greatly improved, and the strength has surged. The last time Weeping Valley battle, it can be said that it completely played the power of Shadu, and won the biggest victory since the Free Federation's self-defense counterattack against the mechanical gods 20 years ago. It hurts only if there is comparison. Shadu is thriving, and everyone has the opportunity to improve their class. On the other hand, Dragon City is full of party lords, dark and decadent, and the official people are grouped and xenophobic. Everyone aims to keep their own black hats and does not care about others. What is the difference from the beasts dominated by animal desires outside the Great Wall defense line? The inclination of the two developments made Li Chao unable to balance his heart, and the blocked family letter and the bad news of his mother's death became the last straw that crushed Li Chao. At this point, he decided to rebel against Dragon City completely ruthlessly, vowing to make Dragon City's intelligence department in Shadu pay the price. Since your wife and children are still in Dragon City, in order to ensure their safety, I temporarily classify you as a non-staff personnel. Your main task is to continue to lurch in the Dragon City Intelligence Agency and deliver news in a timely manner while ensuring your safety. In addition, you'd better run it during the recent period and find a way to transfer back to Dragon City. I will arrange someone to meet you. Li Chao listened carefully to every word of Link and kept it in his heart. Take this voice worm back, put it on the cochlea, and you can dial the voice with 2 taps. No matter if you call Commander Dai, Penny, or me, it can be connected without worrying about the signal. Be monitored. Li Chao carefully took the sound worm. Mia was a little confused. As an intelligence officer, although he knew Link had many pets with different abilities, a snail-shaped creature could be used to communicate, which was beyond Li Chao's common sense. Seeing Li Chao hesitated, Link picked a soundworm from the ecological bonsai on the coffee table in front of him, put it in his ear, and lightly tapped the soundworm. Soon the antenna of the soundworm began to grow longer and thicker, and special frequency band signals were transmitted to the soundworm in Li Chao's palm. The voice worm immediately erected 2 antennae, and at the same time, he glanced back at the people around him and found that they were all his own, and then said with confidence, "You have a call from the Howling Castle." Li Chao's body trembled slightly. He couldn't believe that something so small in his palm could actually speak. He hurriedly took a picture of the gourd and stuffed the soundworm into his ear. The soundworm quickly became a cochlear pattern. Link got up, left the living room with the teacup, and walked to the 2nd floor. From Li Chao's cochlea, the voice worm's retelling came, "I'll tell you a message in advance. The extreme desert forces will not be able to survive March, when the center of Shadu's focus will shift to the dark forest that helps Dragon City solve the Beast Tide and Fae. A variety of commercial expansions will follow. You return to Dragon City to deploy in advance, and then our people will come to connect with you and provide you with all conveniences. And your goal is to seize the opportunity to become a senior in the Dragon City Intelligence Department. I will not help you with the enemies you mentioned, and will order all my subordinates not to move them. This is your grievance, I will let them live well until the day you take revenge." Link's words are full of force, as if 10,000 pounds fell on Li Chao's heart. Without the attractiveness of those generous treatments and positions, Link hits Li Chao's most critical need: revenge. There is no promise to help revenge. Link gave him an opportunity, a scene that can vent his revenge anger all at once. Transferring his wife and children secretly, then directly killing several persons in charge, and then taking his family members away to hide their names. Li Chao can do it all. But the scene described by Link gave Li Chao sustenance. His purpose is not only to avenge his mother, but also the vegetarian meals of the corpses of several responsible persons above his head. There are many party lords and groups and xenophobia. All these have caused him to have a deep despair and helpless resentment towards Dragon City's institutions. Now General Lin speaks, and will mobilize all resources to push him to the position of senior management of Dragon City's intelligence department. At that time, he can use his power to insert a few charges at will, and send several responsible persons to jail. When the prison is called every day and the earth is not working, and then tell all the truth, let them pay the price in fear and despair, let them experience the pain he has experienced. This is a complete revenge. Although I only saw one side today, Li Qiang knew that Link knew him. Thump! Li Qiang knelt on his knees, tears on his face raining, and he banged his head 3 times at Link. Great Grace does not say thank you, I will be the general from Li Qiang's life. Penguin on the side was dumbfounded with his coffee cup. Because the two communicated with voice worms, Penny didn't know what the boss said to Li Qiang. But seeing Li Qiang's excitement and gaffe, he must have hit him. Penguin couldn't help clapping his hands and praised him. As expected, the boss is still much better than him in controlling his subordinates. Li Qiang, who said in one sentence, was thrilled and grateful, wishing to sacrifice his life for Link. This is the art of language. Penguin put down the coffee cup, jumped from the sofa to Li Qiang's side, and poked his shoulder with his wings. Okay, the boss is gone, get up. Kick again. Knock the boss's velvet carpet out, can you afford it? It's okay for such a big person, crying so ashamed, I still sneaked out, and people found out how bad it was. Penny tried to comfort Li Qiang. Just as Lin Ke walked upstairs, Li Qiang's words of desperation came. At the same time, the system reminded that Li Qiang's loyalty reached 100 points and became a diehard loyal. Link was dumbfounded at once. He wanted to pretend to leave a meaningful back, but who would have thought that a short sentence would directly poke Li Qiao's heart, full of loyalty, and become diehard. Knowing this a long time ago, I stayed and made a wave of synthesis directly. But Link felt that Penny had left with Li Qiang, and he had to sigh and relieved, it's okay, anyway, I'm already a loyalist now. You can synthesize at any time in the future, don't rush for it. An excellent event. Abandoning the dark and casting the light sent Link a capable officer of the Dragon City Intelligence Bureau. This event can be said to be a lot of money. Although the Mechanical God cult and the Wasteland Gang have not been cleaned up yet, Link's layout for the Dragon City has been slowly unfolded. On the 5th day that Link and Li Qiao secretly met, Link suddenly received a call from Li Qiao. General, I have successfully obtained the qualification to return to Dragon City in accordance with your requirements. I will manage my business in Dragon City during this period of time and wait for good news. Link is a bit inexplicable. Did Li Qiao find a way back in such a short time? Link hurriedly said a few words of encouragement, and then hung up the communication, because he heard Li Qiao's voice on the other end a little hurriedly, and some cover-up, it must have come to an inappropriate occasion. Just as soon as I hung up the phone, Penny's call came in on the other side. Boss, Li Qiao is going back to Longcheng. Penny said quickly. Link's tone was flat, and Penny was obviously a step too late. I know, Li Qiao told me. Tell you? Did he say the reason for returning to Dragon City? That's not the case. I listened to the noise around him, and hung up after a few words of encouragement. Penny hesitated for a moment, and said in one breath, that he beat the heads of the Dragon City intelligence station in Shadu, and then was sent back. Link fell silent. The way this guy went back was really simple and straightforward. Just with this kind of return, he will definitely be targeted and suffer a lot. It's okay, since this is his idea, he already knows the consequences. What we can do now is to calm the desert as soon as possible so that we can free up our hands to support Li Qiang. Link looked at the desert map on the wall of the office. It was January, just over a month before the beginning of spring. During this period of time, both sides had a tacit understanding and accumulated strength in mutual violence. Even if the mechanical pioneer didn't eavesdrop on any valuable information, he knew that Link would definitely not miss such a great opportunity. If you don't attack now, Something is definitely brewing. After hanging up the phone, Link continued to check the documents and reports on the desk, and found that there were reports sent by Frontline Alongji and the Underground Research Center. The first one sent by Helen from the Underground Research Center. In the report, Helen stated that he has now fully mastered large, medium, and small tokamak clean energy devices, and the inventory of Cat's crystal and cobalt iron ore is sufficient for small and micro weapons and sand. The mechanized troops of the capital are undergoing transformation, and I hereby apply for Transformation Authority. www.mtlnovel.com. The second report is on the front line of Alongji, with more than a dozen photos attached, showing the Alongji after reconstruction and construction. There are complete camp facilities inside, and the defense of the outside world has been built threefold. The farthest one is 500 meters away, which is enough to defend against attacks and attacks by mechanical gods. After Link read the message, the system suddenly prompted. Congratulations on completing the main city mission Shatter Red Dragon's back camp. You get 300,000 experience points, fighter skill Yi Jinjing, stalker skill Shadow Escape. After reading the skills, Link's eyes suddenly lit up. Yi Jinjing is the third stage of the martial artist's important inner strength mental method. Its main effect is to turn essence into blood and restore life. Link's main profession in his previous life was a fighter, and he couldn't be more familiar with this skill. Unexpectedly, the two random skills for completing the task this time, it is rare to get the Yi Jinjing. The other is the core skill Shadow Escape of the Stalker, which can rely on the power of the shadow to escape into the darkness and achieve the effect of sneaking. Now with the blessing of Altar of Knowledge, Link does not need to consider any preconditions for learning skills. Two golden lights flashed, and the two books in Link's hand disappeared. Link's eyes were brilliant and confident, and he called the Military Intelligence Department with a voice worm. A month later, send troops to the south, and target Mechanic City. P.S. Recommend a good book, The Man Behind the Female Emperor by my friend I Eat Apricots. This novel tells the story of a modern workplace man and an ancient female emperor, changing their bodies every other day and fast forward to the back position. The content is humorous and interesting. The snakeskin walks in position. You can definitely watch your geoduck hanging the boulder. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 462. Deputy Director of the Office of the Military Intelligence Department, Ren Yi. Hearing Link's words, my whole body trembled, and after waiting for many days, I finally waited for this command. Since the last weeping victory over the valley, the Mechanical God Cult and the Wasteland Gang have been hit hard, and their defenses have shrunk. Ren Yi has been waiting for a command to attack. After waiting for almost a month, it finally came. General, do we use soundworms for dispatching troops or military lines? Ren Yi asked. Voice worms multiply very quickly. Now all departments of the military and Lin's financial group have switched to using voice worms for confidential communication, and ordinary telephones are used only for daily office affairs. The main purpose is to prevent the deciphering and eavesdropping of Mechanical God. Ren Yi asked this question just to know whether he would continue to provide misleading information to the Mechanical God cult to confuse them. Link has already prepared for this, using the worm to inform all departments that all real action times are 5 days earlier than the time in the telephone communication. We use this time difference to catch the enemy by surprise. Link knows that the flow of information generated by mobilizing the assembled army is a huge amount. Once the big data is captured by Mechanic City using the virtual, and real method, Dr. Zhao can use big data calculations to find logical contradictions, so as to discover the false time. So simply use false time and convert it into real time through a ciphertext. Okay, I'll make arrangements immediately. Does the general have any other orders? Ren Yi asked. Link thought for a moment. The Underground Research Center applied to me for weapons and mechanized equipment. You are responsible for docking with Helen, and trying to meet all her requirements. Her research results and transformation plan will play a role in the general attack on the Mechanical City in a month. Critical use. With this sentence, Ren Yi immediately adjusted the priority of this task to the highest level. After hanging up the phone, Ren Yi immediately looked serious, clapped his hands and shouted in the office, "The decisive battle is imminent, everyone cheers up." When the staff heard this, their eyes widened and excited. During this period of time, they are all about to free themselves. The strangers have all gone to the death quagmire in the north of Shadu to explore and build. Coupled with the defense of the mechanical gods, the probability of encountering enemies in the desert is almost zero. There are almost no tasks to issue, and the flow of people in Chenmu City is also reduced a lot of. Originally, it was running at full capacity a day and was overcrowded. What I thought about was rest. But when it comes to rest, I feel that life is boring without those sand sculptures. Now that I heard that the decisive battle is imminent, all fools understand that soon there will be various tasks, and then those strangers will definitely flock to. Link's order is like the hinge of a bicycle, and all the agencies of Shadow will be put into action with the order. The Military Intelligence Department began to integrate all the resources of the Saudi army and conduct various exercise simulations in advance. Ren Yi is extremely concerned about the Underground Research Center. Helen has any requirements? Ren Yi immediately allocates resources, weapons, and mechanized equipment, such as those from the military area without money, just to make Helen feel at ease to research and reform. Players of mainstream levels are doing missions in the quagmire of death. The last time Link returned Grace from the quagmire of death, when the two were sharing the corpse of the demonized giant chapter, Link found the copy crystal in the belly of the demonized giant chapter. After the observation, Grace showed no interest in the dungeon crystal, but instead developed a keen interest in the mutated brain tissue of the enchanted giant chapter. The two hit it off, and they divided the demonized giant chapter body without any conflict. After coming back, Link arranged to put a copy of the crystal. The place is the entrance of the Death Quagmire. The Dungeon of Deathmire is still the first sub-regional dungeon. Only when the first stage of Grey Fog Forest is opened, can it enter the second stage of Scorched Earth, and finally the Lost Base area. The three are progressive. Each time one area is opened, it can lead to the next area. Similarly, rewards are divided according to regions, and each region has its own characteristics, difficulties, and boss. Copy name, Death Quagmire. Recommended level, LV20 LV30. Dungeon mode, 10-person small and medium-sized area copy. Dungeon area, Grey Mist Forest, Red Scorched Earth, Lost Base. Plot summary: your team was ordered to explore this area, but accidentally broke into the Death Quagmire, and found that this is a very different area from the outside world. You will find more strange things in the next exploration. Dungeon goal: investigate the cause of the Death Quagmire and reveal the truth. Link went in to experience it after setting up the copy. The boss of the Grey Mist Forest is a giant radiant spider, 2 or 3 times the size of other radiant spiders, leading a group of spiders, hordes of ghosts and ghosts. Link was easily eliminated, but for players around level 20, it is indeed very difficult if the coordination is not good. The boss of GD Scorched Earth is not Grace, but the Sarcoma monster under her command. Elite monsters of level 35 have disgusting and unique abilities, as well as the ability to recover from severed limbs, which can definitely become a nightmare for ordinary players. If you can't beat it, you will say another thing. After a boss fight, you will be vomited. At the end of the Lost Base area, there are 2 bosses. The first is the Distortion Fusion monster in the experimental area, but it is a weakened version. At the end of the turn, the boss is the Demonized Giant Chapter, the 35-level leader, 9000 HP and exaggerated skills. But as long as you enter the underground base, you will get the help of the friendly NPC Troy. Through his control of the underground base organization and entrances, he will assist the adventurer in defeating the 2 boss. This process suddenly feels like a copy of Epic. After successfully killing the boss, the adventurer will be led by Troy to the central control room. While learning the truth, they will also reveal that the underground base has been fighting against a certain force in the scorched earth for decades. Friction, and finally guide the adventurer to Grace's lair in the scorched earth. Here, the adventurer will find the harpy and the alchemy stand, and will be attacked by Grace hiding in the grey mist, using mental shock and mind control. After waking up, he will be sent to the entrance of the quagmire of death. At the same time, she will find the alchemy notes left by Grace, successfully figure out the ins and outs of the quagmire of death, complete the copy requirements, and get the final reward. It's just that in the copy, Grace's alchemy notes is a grey-named item. You can only see the biographical content in the front, and you can't see the various alchemy records in the following text. Naturally, it is also impossible to read through the alchemy notes to master the alchemy formulas. Link's method of attracting players to the past is also very simple. He just said that he would build a north-south line and build a small city similar to a commercial transit station near the Death Quag to facilitate the passage of businessmen. At the same time, the transportation route is planned, and the supplies are continuously sent to the front line of the Death Quagmire. Of course, gas masks are the most popular among military trucks. Players inadvertently found a copy of the Death Quagmire during the construction process. Then, the gas masks are out of stock. Death Quagmire, the dungeon, has completely become a place for players to revel. Players who have just reached level 20 can complete the Grey Fog Forest area as long as they are proficient in cooperation. Now the first group army among the players has reached level 22 to 25. The main groups of the major guilds are all thinking of ways to open up Wasteland. In the area, fight against the Unintentional and the Sarcoma monster boss. As for the deeper Lost Base, there is no team involved yet. After the players saw the grey fog of the Quagmire of Death, they finally realized that the origin of the Misty Villa below the Weeping Valley was definitely related to the Quagmire of Death. But who exactly is in the Misty Mountain Villa is still unknown based on the players' current dungeon progress. However, the players of the top 10 guilds that followed Link to enter, have speculated that they are not far from 10. Not surprisingly, it should have been the existence of the last sneak attack in the Grey Fog, the unintentional man in the scorched earth and the master behind the Sarcoma monster. Players who have received the tokamak energy weapons that Helen personally modified, each are more powerful, with new energy bonuses. When using traditional bullets, they can add energy damage, whether it is white damage or additional damage or special effects of the weapon. Fully improved, and at the same time received an additional weapon skill similar to Small Burst. Deathmire in the copy. With a fight, the giant radiation spider's abdominal cavity exploded, splashing a large group of white mucus, and then fell to the ground with a bang, smashing a large hole in the grey soft soil. The players on the treetops, behind the big trees in the distance, and nearby the players who were entangled in slime, gathered again at this moment and began to touch the corpses to prepare. The radiation giant spider is killed, and the next step is to face the Unintentional and the Sarcoma tank. I hope our tactics this week will be effective. Herd brought everyone from the Miracle Guild, and there were 2 robbers and bombing chickens in the team. San people. The King of Dog Leftover removed the white mucus on his face and slurred twice. This time it will definitely be a success. Last time we have tried out all the skills of the Sarcoma tank. This time I came prepared and will definitely be able to beat the Red Land. Scorched Earth area. And according to our analysis, the boss in the Lost Base should be the deformed monster we saw last time. Just as everyone was discussing, the phone calls from Chasing Wind and Pirate Liang rang at the same time. Chasing picked up the phone and saw the caller humanely. "Wait a minute, Bob called me, I'll pick it up." The thief also shook his phone, indicating that it was the call from Supervisor Penny, and hurried to the side to answer it. Both of the main people were interrupted on the phone, and the second-in-command dog left. The king reluctantly shrugged, "Then we will take a break and discuss the tactical arrangements later." After a while, the Chasing Wind and the Stealer came back after answering the phone, with an expression of indescribable solemnity on their faces. It seems that our good days for this period of time are coming to an end, and the copy shouldn't be played for too long. Chai Feng sighed. Everyone was stunned and asked, what happened? Zhu Feng exchanged glances with the pirate Lian Gren. Your call should be from the think tank? Why don't you tell me? All the others focused on the pirate Liang. The pirate Liang didn't mean anything, and said directly, Link is going to launch a general attack on the mechanical god cult in a month. Everyone except Chasing the Wind froze for a moment, and after a while, fierce cheers erupted. Finally waiting. A month later? There is still time to upgrade, and I hope I can get to level 30 by then. Don't just upgrade, the skill level is also very important, and you shouldn't think about the subclass match. In a month, you must prepare well. Only if you have enough strength can you complete the task. This kind of waste Saturn level event, the reward must be extremely rich. Everyone discussed eagerly, as if they had forgotten that they were still in the copy at the moment. Chasing the Wind took a look at the time. Bob said he wants me to return to the Kylan Hall before 5 o'clock, and I'm going to be ready for battle. It's now 2 noon, and according to the pace of last week, I have cleaned up the unintentional mobs. There are still 2 bosses to try. The pirate's dagger was already in his hand, and he immediately entered a state of disguise. The brightness of the whole person was reduced by about 20%, I am about the same. The supervisor asked me to sort out the recent data of the Great Northern Wilderness by the way, and it was 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Go back to the meeting. What they call the Great Northern Wilderness is a town transfer station not far from the quagmire of death. Because it is north of Shadu, and there are deserted mountains along the way, it is dubbed the Great Northern Wilderness by players, but it is actually called Shan North District. It has become a new generation of land and railway transportation transfer stations. That's not nonsense, we can hurry up and implement 2 tactics. Maybe this time we will be able to pass the Chidi scorched earth area. With the encouragement of the Chasing Wind, everyone seemed to be beaten up and walked to the red ground, followed by a big gunshot and a battle with the unintentional. Shadu received instructions from the whole industry, just like a precision instrument. After it is activated, it will change its fate. Military-industrial enterprises began to produce ammunition 24 hours a day round the clock. The Saudi troops stepped up their drills to simulate tactical cooperation and exchanges after electronic communication failures. Food companies and transportation companies have also begun to prepare in advance, and military fast food and various cargo merchants have all moved by the wind. This is the first time since Shadu's independence for 40 years that it is the most promising opportunity to clear the desert poison and expand its territory. The whole people have shown great confidence in Link, and many people are even planning to recover the desert business. Such high-frequency information data transmission was easily captured by the mechanical city. Since the last defeat in the Weeping Valley, the mechanic cult has lost a powerful Steel Council elder and a mechanical fanatic in the desert, and the Wasteland Gang has terminated its cooperation with the mechanic cult. The mechatronics sect was hit harder than ever before, and now it is defending. Dr. Zhao observed various data in the laboratory under the mechanical giant. The memory cutting has been completed, and now the experiment is about to leave the last step of perfusion and reshape memory. At this moment, the intelligent system prompted to capture a large amount of sensitive information from the Weeping Valley. Dr. Zhao heard the alarm signal and couldn't help but retrieve the data. He heard the phone record of Link giving orders. Under Dr. Zhao's iron cyan skull mask, the energy in his eyes can be seen brightly and violently. The last time I trusted the intelligence dispatch of the phone, I didn't calculate that Link had actually created a large defensive force field in a short period of time, nor did he expect that the main force of Shadu retreated so quickly, and was eventually encircled and annihilated by the Allied forces. Hearing Link's familiar voice again this time, Dr. Zhao tickled his teeth with anger. Associate information activities and analyze the authenticity of the data. www.mtlnovel.com list the data nodes that cannot be identified. Dr. Zhao gave orders to the intelligent system, and the results were quickly summarized on the holographic screen. It's just that this time the energy in Dr. Zhao's eyes spilled more powerfully, and two energies surged out from the eye sockets. According to the results of the analysis of all the eavesdropping data, all are in line with any doubt. What is this link playing? If Dr. Zhao can step on link, he will definitely adopt both true and false strategies, but his intelligent big data analysis will summarize all the information points based on the number of eavesdropping, extract information that contradicts the conclusion, and conduct repeated investigations. However, Dr. Zhao never expected that there was no suspicious data in this wave. After a moment of stunned, Dr. Zhao said coldly, "Continue to monitor, I don't believe there is no loophole. After all, continue to lower your head to carry out experimental operations. Whether it is true or not, as long as you dare to come this time, then be prepared to bear the anger of Mechanic City. And this gift." The light blue holographic screen reflected on Dr. Zhao's skull mask, and the data displayed on the screen was to inject memory information into the artificial human X. All firearms knowledge and theories are being injected. John's combat module is being injected. The theory of mechanical operation is being injected. The cleanup agreement is being injected. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 463. The entire shadow, following Link's will, moves. For this month, Link was not idle either. The big plan for the general offensive of Shadow was released in advance. The military prepared by foreigners. The powerful and merchants in the upper city also joined the speculation ranks. They contacted early to prepare various goods and prepared to wait for the Link's army to calm the desert and clear the sand. One wall, to make business into the desert. From ordinary people, to merchants, to soldiers, and to the upper echelons of power, all classes in Shadow, regardless of their status, are eager for this ultimate victory and completely wipe out the mechanical gods from the Gale Desert. In addition, Link also took advantage of the players' efforts to improve in Shenmue City and Sheibei District, and officially launched the Monster Security Company to the market. The first batch of officially released pets include self-explosive rats, self-explosive flies, psychedelic vines, black widows, and invisible killer bees. Among them, the invisible killer bee is so effective that it was singled out and opened up two ways to buy it. The first is the prestige of the military intelligence department, the second is that foreigners must start a secondary profession, sign a task agreement, be voluntarily recruited, and perform a task that is not more difficult than grade B in the name of a temporary worker of the Monster Security Company. Choose one of the two exchange methods to get the right to buy 100 invisible killer bees. Because the number of pets is limited, the foreigners who enter the Monster Security Company in the early stage are restricted. The restriction requirement is that the reputation of the Monster Security Company is friendly. Of course, because the Monster Security Company is a newly integrated organization established by the Lins Consortium, there used to be one of the Kirin Hall, Daseki, Hidden Alliance, Freemasonry, Cao Yun Gang, and other gangs. Prestige will be converted proportionally. In addition to receiving foreigners, Monster Security Company also accepts requests from all walks of life in Shadow, and also has initial requirements. Monster Security Company or its predecessor organization is prestigious and friendly, or has purchased Monster Security Company products worth 50,000 waste coins. Including but not limited to Feast of Pigs, Pet Hamsters, 3 Security Treasures, etc. The first wave of pets introduced were insects, arthropods, or plants, but their effects could stand the test of the market. The Security 3 Treasures have already made a reputation in the upper city of Shadow, but they are limited to defending the house and cannot be taken out. Therefore, this time the Monster Security Company's test water pets have 3 Security Treasures, which are listed in the form of peddling. Other pets have more or less demonstrated their strength. Explosive pets such as self-explosive rats and self-explosive flies are rare illegal explosives in the sand. Shadow banned all grenade and explosives, but this time the Monster Security Company broke this ban, making self-detonating rats and self-detonating flies the only two legally traded explosives in Shadow. Needless to say, the three treasures of security, Shadow players have been playing games for several months. They have never seen or heard of them in Shangcheng district, and they have longed for it. Stealth Killer B, Ghost, and Invisibility ability to change color and invisibility, strong nerves with a spike effect, definitely a good hand for dungeons or missions to kill you. Black Widow's Spider Jet and Blow Bonding is the most suitable for restricting the enemy's actions. The Psychedelic Vine's hallucination and vine entangling capabilities also have the effect of restraining and restricting the enemy. There are three treasures of security, and it is not easy for one person to contain a group of people. According to Penny's words, understand everything. The opening of the Monster Security Company has an extremely delicate grasp of the psychology of foreigners. During this time, players mainly attacked Deathmire Dungeon. Ordinary players can hardly overcome the first area, Grey Fog Forest, and the ooze monsters and giant radiation spiders encountered are extremely difficult to deal with. Although the high-end first-line players are Scorched Earth in the second area of the Wasteland, the Unintentional with high resistance and high blood volume, as well as the Sarcoma monster with the group damage ability and the self-recovery ability, let the masters eat hard. Deflated. Although many players have Steppenwolves in their hands, because Steppenwolves are leased, they cannot be brought to the instance to provide combat power. At this juncture, the Monster Security Company turned out to sell some powerful pets, which brought dawn to many players. Using insects to sanction insects is indeed the best choice. In terms of price, Penny's pricing this time has also been done through market research to grasp the psychology of strangers. A self-explosive rat is 200, a self-explosive fly is 50, a black widow is 100, an invisible killer bee is 500, and a 2-meter-long psychedelic vine is 10,000. The first four are disposable consumables, so the price is relatively low, but the psychedelic vine can be used for a long time and the control effect is excellent, so the price is slightly higher. The vast majority of players in Shadow started their careers and tasks under the guidance of NPCs in the slums. After the transformation, their reputation is only a few dozen points away from friendly. In order to be able to buy various pets from Monster Security Company as soon as possible, the players dreamed back to the early days of the public beta and began to do several tasks in Monster Security Company, which allowed the reputation to be friendly and successfully bought their favorite pets. In this wave, Penguin's actuarial work has done a great job, using the specially set prestige conversion ratio, so that most players are only a few dozen points away from being friendly, and taking advantage of players' desire to buy pets. www.mtlnovel.com Several missions. In the end, the player bought the pet and was very grateful, thinking that he had earned. This is just a little bit of Penny's business skills. You know, one person has 2 or 3 tasks, but if there are tens of thousands of people, that is tens of thousands of tasks for white prostitution, and the benefits produced are definitely a lot of money. Coupled with the contracts signed when purchasing the invisible killer bee, this is equivalent to tens of thousands of mercenaries. Whenever Penny needs it, players can fight for the Monster Security Company. On the macro level, Link sees further than Penny. At this juncture, the Monster Security Company was launched. One is to allow players to adapt to the abilities of these pets in advance, and then to practice in the death quagmire to familiarize themselves with the usage of pets. After a month's general attack, players can master it proficiently. The use of pets improves personal strength. The second point is that this is also a pavement for entering Dragon City and Fae. The mechatronics religion must be flat, this is something that Link decides, and I can't change it. Use this occasion to push the Monster Security Company to the forefront, and other pets except Steppenwolves play miraculous effects on the battlefield, increase the weight of Monster Security Company in Dragon City, Fae, and even foreign powers, and provide a smooth and orderly branch for the branch. Lay a good foundation for entering other regions. Simply put, the decisive battle after a month can be regarded as a stage. Although Link is the focus of much attention, the most important thing is the pets sold and leased by the Monster Security Company. They are the only protagonists on the battlefield. Time is fleeting. In the blink of an eye, it was time for a total attack. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 464. Shenmue City, Military Intelligence Department. Almost all the military leaders of Shadow gathered here. Link put away his usual randomness, his face tense, and asked, what was the result of today's patrol? Ren Yi, Deputy Director of the Military Intelligence Department, replied fluently, the patrol results are the same as usual, and no abnormalities were found. The Mechanical City is also next to the Goria Grand Canal, and there is no sign of movement. There is no doubt about intelligence, Link. Since the last miserable defeat in the Weeping Valley, the mechanical gods have reduced their remaining combat power, and mechanical fanatics have all guarded around the Mechanical City, and underground bunkers have been scattered to block foreign enemies. The original patrol of the mechanical gods also came to an end, completely withdrawing from the Gale Desert. Except for the soldiers and strangers dispatched by San to investigate the entire desert, it is difficult to find a trace of the mechanical god. The dispatched investigation team can observe with telescopes at the midline of the Weeping Valley and the Goria Grand Canal, and there will be no error messages. Mechanical City has not left yet, that is to prepare for the battle against the enemy. This battle may be a tough battle. The former Army Commander Fernandez said with a frown, and Commander Moon held the same view. In his previous life, Link had personally experienced the war between the Freedom Federation and the Mecha the Cult. He couldn't know what card the Mecha Cult had. The reason why the Mechanic City is not leaving now is to wait for the day of the Great War to inflict heavy damage to Link's tens of thousands of troops in the same way. The large defensive force field was originally the cutting-edge technology of the Mechanic City. Last time I was caught off guard and was ambushed by Link, which caused the Desert Alliance to break and Mechanic Cult was severely damaged. This time, the main defensive battle of Mechanical City will also use the large defensive field to make a fuss. Before the battle, Link had already thought of Dr. Zhao's methods. It's okay, the stunner is effective, but if you want to destroy the Mechanic City, only the teacher of the king will break it from the front. The Mechanic sect has made preparations, and our preparations are not bad. Link turned his head and stared at Dave and Helen. Are you all ready? This time, all of us really put our lives in your hands. Dave looked excited, looking forward to this day for a long time. Everything is ready, I have debugged it again and again, and found no problems. Link nodded, and then ordered Ren Yi, then arrange for a stranger to take the lead. They have been looking forward to this day for a long time. Then Link turned his gaze to Li Ziqian, Chief of Staff of the Army, and said, you will lead the Shadow troops with full authority. Finally, Benjamin looked excited, looking at Link eagerly, waiting for his orders. Well. Leading 300 Wolf Cavalry and 2 battalions of Special Forces, first go to the Red Dragon's back and wait. After the handover of the two sides, listen to my order to attack from the flanks and disperse the enemy. When Benjamin heard his mission, his face suddenly collapsed. I thought that even if you couldn't take on any major tasks, you could charge directly before the infantry. As a result, after looking forward to it for a long time, he got the mission of a surprise soldier, and the troops he led were over 1,000. General, I apply to lead a foreigner to charge. Benjamin boldly stood up and said. Link didn't even think about it, rejected, you just need to follow my arrangements. Also charge with foreigners. Link wanted to laugh when he heard this reason. This level of war, once the horn of attack is sounded, this group of players are like wild horses running out of hold. Follow them to charge, then I really don't know how to write dead words. To put it bluntly, the players who join in the fun still occupy the majority. The vast majority of them lack combat literacy and lack knowledge of war and the overall situation. They are used as cannon fodder to attract firepower on the front line. Benjamin also wanted to command the player to follow orders in this situation, which was a dream. Even Link's influence can't say that in this 10,000 person battlefield, he can order players' actions in an orderly manner. Benjamin looked disappointed and stepped back. Commander Moon was very satisfied with Link's order. It was not that he felt that his son should not be charged on the battlefield, but that it was unwise to lead a group of strangers who disregarded discipline and behavior in a battle of this scale. Everything is ready, I won't talk about mobilization before the war. Sweeping the mechanical god sect and restoring peace to the southern part of Shadu has been the long-cherished wish of generations of Shadu. This heart disease can be removed in our hands, and let us, it's an honor for me and everyone to not be threatened. Now, start acting. Following Link's command, Ren Yi picked up the phone and told the staff at the front desk of the Military Intelligence Department, frontline missions are officially released. The task transfer point of the Military Intelligence Department is now densely surrounded by players, like a ticket grabbing during the Spring Festival. When all the office windows of the Military Intelligence Department were opened, the players swarmed up, making noises that seemed to overturn the roof. The requirement of the mission is very simple, there is only one point: launch a general attack and target the mechanical city. The task reward is in the form of an experience pool. Link provides 200,000 experience. Players who accept the task must invest 500 experience before they can participate in the task. The final reward will be redistributed based on everyone's performance. 500 points of experience, a bright future. As long as 3 or 5 mechanical fanatics are solved, the experience invested can pay back the cost and the remaining net profit. No, 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 no. Wouldn't someone really be unable to kill an enemy? All players who took the task did not blink their eyes and threw out 500 experience. Being able to participate in this epic battle is itself an important part of the game. Especially players have been laying the groundwork since they entered the game from the open beta. The mechanic cult and the wasteland gang entrenched in the south of Shadu are a major concern for everyone. And in the video, I saw the scene of the battle between Link and the pioneers of the mechanical gods, which was epic. Last time, Link individually selected several players to participate. This time it was the participation of the whole people. It was also one of the major events in the early 1.0 version. I absolutely regret that I missed it. Under Link's special arrangement, the prize pool in the task of initiating a total attack, target Machine City soon increased from the initial 200,000 to 2 million, and it is still growing at a very rapid rate. There are no detailed requirements for the task, only one point is stated: the final reward is calculated according to the war contribution. The players reacted immediately after reading the task description. This requires them to charge first. If you compare war to a cake, then the contribution is the cream on top, and it's so much if it's full. If you go later, you will definitely get less points. Go early, kill more people and do some damage, and you can get more cakes. As for death, 50 times a week, what are you afraid of? When not to fight at this time. Compared with the contribution award under the huge prize pool, death is the most insignificant cost. If you can get a contribution every time you die well. The player who received the task went straight to the desert without saying a word. Many people in the top 10 guilds have also received tasks, but they are not as reckless as ordinary players, but gather together to discuss the situation. After reading the mission, Chai Feng couldn't help but sigh, this mission is really simple and rude. Without any fancy introduction, just a rapidly growing experience pool reward is enough to make players kill red eyes. Looking at the experience pool that has soared to 2.8 million, even the chasing wind feels passionate. This time it's a head-to-head confrontation with the mechanical gods. You have already seen the strength of the mechanical pioneers in the video. Adding a large number of mechanical warriors to this mission is impossible. So we go out this time, who don't ride Steppenwolves either. It doesn't matter if we die. If Steppenwolves die on the battlefield, we have to continue to repay the loan and even have additional compensation. That is blood loss. Chasing the Wind has a very clear mind, and he is carrying a loan. This mission is to gain experience, but it is not worse. When everyone heard it, they nodded, expressing that it made sense. Death to death, waves to waves, don't joke about wolf loans. The worst thing in the game is that the person is alive, the wolf is dead, and the loan has to be repaid monthly. Everyone shuddered, thinking about the consequences, and determined not to bring Steppenwolves into the battlefield. Although Steppenwolves cannot be brought, we can buy some pets from the Monster Security Company in advance. Invisible killer bees, black widows, self-explosive flies, and self-explosive rats, including psychedelic vines, can exert miraculous effects on the battlefield and greatly increase our contribution rate. Zhu Feng glanced at the experience pool again, and the time he was talking had soared to 3 million. The more tired the experience is, the higher the experience is. According to the initial estimate of the Chasing Wind, at least 50,000 players will participate in this battle, and the experience pool will eventually rise to at least 25 million. With so much experience, as long as the contribution is high enough, the number of hands divided is absolutely considerable. Whether you can get away from the first group of players in one wave depends on this time. Everyone understands this principle. After receiving the task, they headed to Shadu in the opposite direction. They chose a completely different path from the players who were excited to rush to the battlefield. Players enter the desert unorganized and undisciplined. Some local tyrant players rushed up directly on their steppe wolves, reaching the Gale Desert at an extremely fast speed. More and more players appeared in the desert, and the fanatics who guarded the mechanical city also discovered anomalies. In addition to defense, immediately report the news to the mechanical pioneer. Dr. Zhao saw a lot of strangers wandering in the desert on the holographic screen, one by one, guarding beyond the range of the bunker as if they had been beaten with blood. It's not like investigating, but like planning to pull out the bunker. Dr. Zhao froze for a moment. If the eavesdropping analysis did not make a mistake, Sha would attack the mechanical city in 5 days. Why are there so many strangers at this time? The number of strangers in the holographic screen is still increasing, but they are all wandering in groups of 3 or 2. There are also some players in the mechanical city, who were captured by mechanical fanatics when they were born in the desert. After researching, Dr. Zhao discovered that these strangers are immortal and have endless potential. In just a few months, many strangers have already cultivated to the level of mechanical apostle, and most of them have also been promoted from fanatical to mechanical warrior level. Dr. Zhao frowned slightly. Although the mechanical gods were hit hard in the previous battles, it does not mean that cats and dogs can bully them. It's just a stranger. Who gives them confidence? Go ahead and let the strangers in the mechanic city deal with these outsiders, and the castles will not move. Dr. Zhao didn't know what Shadu was playing, and suddenly so many strangers came and shouted. To be careful, simply release the strangers in the mechanical city, let them fight with each other, and watch the changes. But at the same time, Dr. Zhao's only brain that has not been replaced by machinery is shaking slightly at this moment, with a bad feeling. In addition to regular monitoring, turn on the sonar detection. Dr. Zhao stared at the holographic screen, and then saw the sonar spread out from the mechanical city like a ripple of water, and red dots on the holographic map were lit up and appeared. Each red dot represents an enemy. The sonar ripples swelled until 10 kilometers away before dissipating slowly. But along the way, the red dots are like bone gangrene, converging non-stop toward the front. Dr. Zhao put his mechanical hands on his chin, his eyes deep under the skull mask. Link, what do you want to do? Dr. Zhao's brain is running fast, trying to decipher the code behind these weird actions. The players of the mechanical god cult received the task, landed from the mechanical city, and rushed to the front line arrogantly. The players of the mechanical gods are fully armed at this time, and the most advanced mechanical warrior is also in exoskeleton armor, with the pinnacle of strength. The player of the mechanical apostle level is covered with a complete mecha at this time, and the metal shines under the scorching sun. Mechanical gods. Although the number of players of the mechanical gods is not dominant, they have plenty of firepower. In the face of these reckless shadow players, the firepower is constantly pouring. On the contrary, the shadow players were forced to keep their distance because they had to beware of the bunker machine guns. Some attacking distances are not far from the mechanical gods, and they can only be slinged unilaterally. But some players obviously came prepared. Blasting flies, battering rats, black widows, psychedelic vines, and various pets bought from the monster security company were spilled out, and it really played a miraculous effect. Self-explosive flies are like ghosts, which are difficult to catch when flying scattered in the desert. Self-explosive mice are only the size of a palm and half hidden in sand. In a fierce battlefield, players only have enemies in their eyes, and no one will pay attention to their feet. So in the battle, a strange scene happened. The exoskeleton armor and the complete mecha suddenly exploded during the battle, causing many module errors and malfunctions. The sudden explosion frightened the mechanical players and hurriedly began to search for the cause of the explosion. But instead of waiting for them to retreat, the spider silk spit out by the Black Widow stuck to their mecha, or psychedelic vines emerged from the desert underground, tightly entwining the parts on the mecha. For a time, good and bad change. The player who was still active just now, the mechanical god cult, suddenly fell into a passive position. Grass, what are these weird things? Why are there so many spiders under your feet? Da-da-da. There was a loud gunshot, and the Black Widow was hit by a bullet, and the whole body burst into white slurry. Not only did it not let the mechanical gods teach players out of trouble, but instead caused many modules to stick together firmly and lose their combat effectiveness. Some players equipped with sniper rifles are squatting halfway, bullets one after another, hitting immovable live targets. And behind them, a steady stream of small black spots in the distant desert rushed towards the front. Inside the machine city, the mechanical pioneers see everything in their eyes. As soon as these little things appeared, www.mtlnovel.com, Dr. Zhao's mind came up with the image of a person Link. These strange creatures are definitely from Link's handwriting. The sonar detects more and more enemies, like a wave of stormy waves hitting the shore, one after another. Under the iron cyan skull mask of the mechanical pioneer, the energy in the eye sockets is uncertain. X, are you interested in practicing your hands? The mechanical pioneer asked. One person is leaning on a dark corner of the laboratory under the mechanical giant. With the disheveled hair, it looked very decadent, with a cigarette in his mouth, and the cigarette had a ray of red fire, accompanied by bursts of smoke. One arm of this person has been completely mechanized, with silver metallic luster throughout. Although it is a follow-up replacement, it seems to be integrated with the body. Non-mechanical affinity creatures need to be eradicated. I'm so happy. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 465. Dr. Zhao's Taiyuking mask was not cold and unchanged, but at this moment, it seemed that the corners of his mouth could be seen rising. The front is handed to you. As soon as the voice fell, the figure in the dark corner had disappeared. Dr. Zhao retrieved the real-time data of artificial human X from the holographic screen for detection. After a while, two pictures appeared on the holographic screen. On the left is the first-person view of the artificial human X. This is all thanks to Dr. Zhao's transformation of X by transforming his right eye into an electronic prosthetic eye with camera and analysis. The module can analyze the enemy's actions through the central processing unit integrated in the right arm of the robot to predict the opponent's next move. This kind of electronic processing, semi-mechanized transformation of the body, coupled with the combat awareness and skills of the top killers injected into X, makes Cyborg X a veritable killing machine. And it is very likely to be the strongest killing machine in the history of the Waste Saturn. With a cigarette in his mouth, Cyborg X walked into the battlefield leisurely. His head was covered with a linen hood for sandproofing, his face was completely hidden in the darkness of the hood, only the sporadic fire of cigarette butts could be seen. The large one-piece linen robe with a hood covers X's right mechanical arm, like a traveler across the desert, and like a dusty western cowboy. The battle between the two sides on the battlefield was in chaos, and the stray bullets swept past the ears, heartbeat. At this time, the players on both sides of the war were stunned, and no one cared about the person in the hood. X took a sharp sip, the sparks of the cigarette were brighter, and the cut tobacco burned and retreated at a speed visible to the naked eye until only the cigarette remained. X stretched out his left hand and took the cigarette from his mouth and threw it into the desert. Seeing the cigarette in the gravel Shanghai struggling with green smoke, X subconsciously stretched out his foot and ran it until the entire cigarette was submerged in the gravel and no more green smoke came out. Extend your hands with 10 fingers crossed to move your muscles and bones. There was a crackling sound in the joints of the body, the silver metal right arm moved freely, and there was a slight hydraulic creak. In the next second, X disappeared from the spot, and the desert ground suddenly burst into a series of sand thorns, approaching the front-line battlefield at an extremely fast speed from a distance, just like the next series of explosions in the desert-stimulated upsurge of energy. Just now, the two players who killed two fanatics with a sniper rifle continuously turned black in front of them, and the system gave a prompt. The mysterious man uses a hand knife to cause 1,250 crushing damage to you, and it is determined to be a spike. The player looked at the battle record on the system and was instantly stunned. He hid in the distance and used a sniper rifle to sniper at a remote location. Why was he suddenly killed? I didn't see anyone approaching at all. And what the is this mysterious man? Even people die without seeing them, and a hand knife directly causes a spike effect. What kind of ghost damage is this? Just as this player was puzzled, several shadow players were brutally murdered on the battlefield. The same did not see anyone, the same hand knife, and the same was killed by a spike. The only thing that can be seen is the continuously surging sand in the desert, like a series of underground bombs that have been detonated. The appearance of X immediately reversed the situation of mechanical players falling into decline. Shadow players turned into corpses one after another. The most terrifying thing was that they were killed directly without seeing any enemy. The series of sand thorns exploded in the desert are the gravel that was splashed under the rush, but the delay is extremely high. When the player looks at the splashed sand thorns running in their direction, the person is directly killed by a spike. Not to mention the shadow players, they were the players of the mechanical god cult. After a brief period of persecution, they realized that they had appeared on the stage with a powerful reinforcement. With their strength and equipment, they can't capture the dynamics of their own people. I can't see any heartbeats on my reconnaissance equipment. I can't see any new units joining the battlefield. The mechanical player was stunned. His exoskeleton armor was equipped with a 1.5 type reconnaissance chip. The combat unit of the module, regardless of high or low, will enter the cooperative program range. However, his reconnaissance module cannot see any access information. Among the three reconnaissance capabilities, biological heartbeat cannot obtain information, and there is no electronic access signal. The only thing that can lock the target is sound waves. However, sound waves have a very high delay. After the observation of the mechanical gods, the delay is at least 5 seconds. An invisible ghost. This is the mutual evaluation of the mysterious man from both sides. The battlefield has changed because of the arrival of this strong man. Players on the shadow side stepped forward, and players kept coming. But as soon as he arrived at the front battlefield, he saw a series of explosions of gravel, and was immediately killed in a flash in front of him. Machinery City. Dr. Zhao checked the various battle data of X on the holographic interface, and the purple energy in the eye sockets of the skull mask overflowed with joy. I can make such an outstanding killing machine, and I also want to thank Link for sneaking into the Machine City. I'm very curious about his expression after seeing X. Dr. Zhao sat on the throne, admiring the culmination War Machine X, which was cast by the technology of mechanical gods. Use the blood left by John to extract and cultivate, and clone a perfect body. Using the combat consciousness recorded in the DNA, the capabilities derived from the various analysis data of John's combat state of the mechanic city, the mastery of various firearms, the mastery of machinery knowledge, and the ultimate goal of mechanic cult, clearance agreement, clear the world for all flesh and blood creatures. Only those who believe in robots can live forever. Anyone who violates the agreement can be regarded as betraying the mechanical god. Cyborg X is also equipped with the top metal arm built by Dr. Zhao himself. This is a more advanced metal arm built by him after Gorilla Tech mechanical power arm, whether it is material or effect, and the metal arm on him it's the same, even according to X's special ability, the arm is optimized accordingly. Dr. Zhao watched the killing machine X interspersed in the crowd on the holographic screen. Every clever hand knife could kill and take away an enemy in seconds. The seemingly unremarkable hand knife has a gravity sensing device inside. After sensing martial arts skills or movements, it will increase its behavior and increase its attack power by more than 100%. Compared with the time limit of the force burst of the Gorilla Tech mechanical power arm, the new mechanical bionic arm optimizes the energy ratio, which can release the force burst more freely, changing from a short-term increase to an increase in the number of times. Under the holographic screen, there is a data code scrolling constantly. Dr. Zhao's eyes flashed across the code. What he saw was the precise force and perfect angle of his moves. Each step of X's actions was like a textbook, without wasting a single bit of strength or dragging movements. The shadow players fell one by one, but at an extremely fast speed, they were like slices of leeks being cut down. The mechanical gods players finally had time to stop and look at them. After seeing the explosive flies flying in the air and the explosive rats, black widows, and psychedelic vines in the desert, they all took a few steps back in fright. They saw these things discussed by shadow players on the Waste Saturn forum. They only said that they had met in shadow before, but they did not expect that this time, they actually reached the players' hands and caused them a lot of harm. X rushed all the way to kill. In just a few minutes, corpses were everywhere in the desert, not to mention hundreds of people. The shadow players rushing from a distance, when they saw the players of the same camp on the front line inexplicably fall in pieces, they stopped and were shocked. Seeing more and more people falling in front of him, his face paled by the weird scene before him, turned his head and ran away. Dr. Zhao looked at the X on the screen and had already stepped out of the bunker front for more than 500 meters, killing a total of 427 shadow players. As Dr. Zhao thought, it was a perfect killing machine. X, all right, let's stop here. X, who had been killed mad in the desert, stopped abruptly after receiving Dr. Zhao's order. The palm knife in his hand suddenly stopped at the neck of a player in front of him, without cutting it off. The Sandug player watched the sand thorns explode all the way on the ground, like a snake in the sand that was meandering and violent, coming straight, but his hands and feet were already stiff and did not react quickly. I thought I was going to die, but a gust of wind pierced my cheeks, and my cheeks were pricked by sand. A person with his upper body hidden in a dark linen cover, and his raised silver pure metal arms hung more than 10 centimeters from his head. The inside of the hood was pitch black, like an abyss. The silver metal arms gleamed under the scorching sun. Each metal section of the arm is 2 to 3 centimeters wide, like a metal snake, and each limb can move at a great angle. Extend to the entire arm, you can make a variety of complex bending movements, just like a real arm. Although the scorching sun was in the sky, the pervasive murderous aura and the unique chill from the metal made the player sway. Other players on the battlefield finally saw what the mysterious person who killed hundreds of players like a ghost looked like. One by one, the detections were thrown up, but the answers they got were surprising. Mystery man. Race, cyborg. Level, unknown. Health, unknown. Energy value, unknown. Skills, hand knife, other unknown. Specialty, unknown. Evaluation, killing machine of moored feelings. Except for the hand knife that kills the player, all other skills are unknown, and even the level is unknown. 2 points of scarlet light suddenly flashed in the darkness under the cloak, and the player suddenly smelled a strong aura, as if a sea of blood was rushing toward his face, and at the same time, his neck seemed to be pinched by something, unable to breathe. X retracted his metal arm, turned and headed straight to the machine city. Not only was he infused with various fighter skills, weapon dexterity, and mechanical common sense into his mind, but the deepest part of his consciousness was also injected into the purge agreement. The most important thing is to follow the orders of the mechanical pioneers. The cleanup agreement cannot be violated, and the orders of the mechanical head must also be obeyed. The shadow player looked at the horrible figure of the man in the cloak, and couldn't help taking a breath. All this data is an unknown monster, the strength is too strong, they are the players in front of the opponent, it is simply sent. The players of the mechanical god cult have never seen this mechanically modified person, and wondered if it was a hidden elder of the Iron Council. The players who gathered together to watch the show let out and let this dragged group of NPCs past. Boom! Suddenly, there was a low and crisp sound like a big G closing the car door in the desert. This was the sound of a bolt-type sniper rifle with a silencer popping out of the chamber. Also, because of the installation of a silencer, it is impossible to identify the direction of the bullet. X turned his head back in lightning speed and stretched out his metal right arm. Clang! There was a blast, and a spark burst out of the metal palm. Then everyone took a breath. I saw a slender sniper rifle-specific armor-piercing bullet between the two fingertips of Mysterious Man X, and there was a plume of green smoke at the fingertips, and the metal edge of the finger was slightly red because of the bullet. The battlefield was silent and silent. All players on both sides were dumbfounded, looking at the armor-piercing bullet between the silver fingers. How fast is this reaction to catch the bullet with bare hands? If the mysterious person killed the player just now has shown unattainable strength, then turning around to catch the bullet with his bare hands has already made the player feel fearful and feel unmatched in his heart. At this moment, shadow players only had one thought in their minds. This person is irresistible, retreat quickly. I am afraid that only John or Link can deal with this kind of strength. X stood on the spot, gently rubbing the hot armor-piercing bullet with his fingers. The next second, the right hand suddenly threw. The armor-piercing projectile carried an electric arc and struck a nail caused by a high-frequency tremor in the air, like a goshawk, as fast as thunder and lightning. Puff! Hundreds of meters away, a player holding a sniper rifle shot in the eyebrows, pierced through the brain, with a single shot, and the body continued to emit electric arcs, and the body twitched unconsciously under the action of the electric current. X glanced at the fallen corpse, confirmed that there was no aura of life, turned around and continued to walk towards the machine city. This time, no one made a sneak attack. Shadow players' backs were all wet. Originally, when they took up the task at the Military Intelligence Department, everyone was happily like a Chinese New Year, and felt that this was a good opportunity to harvest experience. But now, they seem to be thinking too simple. The dead players are reborn at the resurrection point outside the nearby Red Dragon Spine. The resurrected players looked dumbfounded and looked at each other, not knowing how they died. What the is going on? The system prompts you to be hit by a mysterious man with a knife, causing a spike damage. I am so special that no one has seen it. I don't know. I only saw the gravel exploded on the ground in the distance. It was still 10 or 20 meters away, and I was gone. Who would I call to reason? It's okay to let me die. www.mtlnovel.com. What's the matter? This? It's ridiculous. Did one man kill hundreds of us? Isn't this guy a mechanical pioneer? Stop arguing, look at the forum, someone uploaded a new video, and the mysterious person was recorded. With the announcement of this sentence, all the players who were killed entered the forum and saw the frontline video. Similarly, Link, who was in full gear, was also seeing the video. Under the leadership of Li Ziqian, the shadow troops began to advance from Shenmue City. In the armored vehicle of the Chinese army, Link wanted to see the grand battle on the front line through the forum, but as soon as he was refreshed, he saw a mysterious man who killed and received bullets with his bare hands. Who is this person? Why don't you remember that there is such a big figure in the mechanical god church? Link frowned involuntarily and began to search the memory in his mind. Chapter 466 Don't panic when you encounter trouble, take a photo first. Link racked his brains, but he never expected the machinery faith to have such a person. The Steel Council's elders definitely did not have the ability to single-handedly kill over 100 players. In the last battle of Weeping Valley, Elder Sally, who was the most skilled in combat and military affairs among the elders of the Iron Council, had already been sent to the afterlife by Vajra physics. The other elders were basically inclined towards scientific research or piloting medium or large mechas to fight. None of them were so brave in individual combat. Moreover, Link felt that the mysterious cloaked man's clean and smooth movements in the video were familiar. Link then looked through other posts and the data of NPCs detected by players. It was all unknown, and even the level and grade could not be seen. Emotionless killing machine he. Link pondered over this sentence but had never seen it before. No matter what, Link would never have thought that in the last battle of the city, John would vomit blood. In addition to the blood, some pieces of his internal organs had also been spat out. They were collected by the machinery faith and cloned with DNA. They also injected a new consciousness program into the cyborg who had inherited John's power. Compared to his previous life, he had also undergone mechanical modifications, maxing out all his abilities as soon as he appeared. Not long after Link finished reading the message on the forum, Li Zijun, who was in charge of the battle, received news from the front line. Li Ziki tapped on the sound transmission bug in her ear and had a solemn expression. General, we just received news from the front line that a mysterious person has appeared and killed hundreds of Inhumans with his bare hands. His strength is unfathomable. Link closed the forum and raised his head to look at Li Zijun, whose eyes were filled with panic. You've missed one thing. He also caught the armor-piercing bullet of a heavy sniper rifle with his bare hands. Li Zijun was dumbfounded. She could not figure out how Link knew about the situation at the front line. Link didn't have a sound bug in his ear. The sound came directly from his ear to his brain nerves, eliminating the risk of outside eavesdropping. Li Zijun was a little dazed. She thought of the rumors that Link had foresight abilities. He was respectful and mysterious. Yes, the mysterious man caught the armor-piercing bullet with his bare hands and has returned to the city. The Inhumans have already retreated beyond the enemy's line of defense and are in a standoff. Link nodded. Although he couldn't fully understand the mysterious man's background from the videos on the forum, he could tell from the power he had displayed that this man was of a high level. He was at least a commander-level NPC. With the speed brought by Lin Kei's current attributes, skills, and specialties, he would need to stack a lot of buffs in order to display the lag of a few seconds when he was stepping on the quaking sand spike in the video. Link did not remember that the machinery faith had such an expert who had gone through mechanical modifications in his previous life. He could only say that his arrival and the flapping of his wings had caused a butterfly effect. It was very likely that this was a variable created by the alliance between the machinery faith and the Wasteland Gang. However, from the videos and the posts of the frontline players, Lin Kei sharply caught one point. There were no armed jeeps or Wasteland Gang mercenaries in the videos. Not a single one. Link guessed that there were two possibilities. Either the machinery faith and the Wasteland Gang fell apart because of the last defeat, or it could be a plan between the machinery faith and the Wasteland Gang. But no matter what, Link was fully prepared. As for the mysterious man in front of him, Ying. So far, it seemed like Link was the only one dealing with the bosses. With the help of the mechanical pioneers, they were able to take on two bosses by themselves. Link had fought with the mechanical pioneer last time, so he had a pretty good understanding of his skills. The pioneer of machinery had many large-scale skills that completely overwhelmed Link's pet. Metal affinity creatures like the Silver Army Ants and King Kong were easily controlled by the magnetic field created by Dr. Zhao. There was also the Death Ray, a molecular-level disintegration ability, which no pet could withstand. On the other hand, the mysterious man with a fleeting glance's ability seemed to be more inclined to personal combat strength. It should be a combination of pugilist and mechanical enhancement, which allowed his pets to restrain the mysterious man first. After he finished his battle with Professor Zhao, he could then deal with the mysterious man. The players who had sacrificed themselves rushed back from the resurrection point of the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. At this time, there were already many players at the front line. Fearing the mysterious man's attack, the players tacitly stayed away from the floating mech city and built their own bunkers outside of the enemy's shooting range. Only the players with sniper rifles and long-range fixed-point shooting abilities would hide behind cover and face the enemy in the middle. Inside the city, Professor Zhao was in the laboratory of the machine magnate. The system detected more and more enemies, and the Sand City mutants seemed to have come out in full force. There were tens of thousands of them, and they formed a formation outside the attack range of the city. However, he didn't find any sign of the regular troops of Shitu. This unusual phenomenon caught his attention. After re-evaluating the situation, two results appeared on the holographic screen. The probability of making preparations in advance and applying pressure was 45%. The probability of today's surprise attack was 55%. Dr. Zhao looked at the probability on the screen. The eyes under the mask flickered with energy. You finally lost your patience and are going to launch a large-scale attack? It's 5 days different from the time of the eavesdropping, Dr. Zhao mumbled to himself. He could understand if there was an error in the monitoring analysis and all the data was flawless. After all, Link had used the telephone network to spread false news and caused the Allied forces to suffer a great loss in the Weeping Valley. He must have some special communication method. It was even possible that they used the old method of sending a letter by pigeon. After all, that was what the Shandu military had done 20 years ago. Just as Professor Zhao was deep in thought, a large number of red dots suddenly appeared on the holographic screen, like a red curtain. The sonar and surveillance signals at the front suddenly increased, and a red square formation gradually appeared on the radar screen. Dr. Zhao used his mind to control the numbers, and soon the holographic screen showed the image of the outside. At the end of the desert, a 10,000-strong army appeared. They climbed over the sand dunes, and more troops appeared. The desert jeeps and armored jeeps carried the infantrymen, and the middle section of the team was the mechanical information troops, which included tanks, armored vehicles, small missile launchers, radar vehicles, signal vehicles, and various other vehicles. At the end of the line was a military truck, full of infantrymen. With a wave of his hand, the probability calculated by the AI system disappeared from the holographic screen. What was there to guess? All the troops in Shandu had moved out. This was the final battle. Dr. Zhao's brain was working at full speed to come up with a strategy. Just now, Killing Machine X went to the battlefield to test its skills. Its powerful strength was no less than John's at his peak. It had even gone through mechanical modifications and enhancements, allowing it to exert more power. Although the machinery faith was lacking in terms of military strength, the home ground advantage, the firepower network formed by the bunkers, and the strong individual combat strength gave the machinery faith enough confidence to fight this battle. Of course, the most powerful trump card of the machinery faith was not the clone of the number one assassin, John, nor was it Professor Zhao himself, but the million-ton machinery city. The city had both offensive and defensive capabilities, and it was not just a giant transportation facility that ran along the Korea Grand Canal. Launching an attack 5 days in advance is indeed a pleasant surprise. It's impolite not to reciprocate. I've also prepared some surprises here, hehe. Professor Zhao quickly entered the core control program of the city. Do you wish to switch to war mode? Following the command, a series of changes began to take place in the city. The floating mech city, which was 20 to 30 meters high, started to lower. The city let out a loud metal buzzing sound and the sound of air pressure leaking. Even the Shita troops who were marching more than 10 kilometers away could hear the sound clearly. The height of the city was lowered, and many metal pillars extended out of the chassis. 1,000,000-ton weight was distributed among the 2-meter-wide metal pillars, which then sank into the ground and stabilized the entire city. At the same time, the floating mech city was operating at full power, and the base of the 4 regions began to shift and change. The various buildings in the experimental area began to shift, and some of the foundations even began to turn over vertically, revealing facilities that were completely different from their usual appearance. The highly industrialized city was like a monster that was transforming, revealing its true form. The players of Shandu who were building a defense line at the front line heard the ear-piercing sound of metal twisting in the sky. They looked up at the floating mech city and were dumbfounded. The floating mech city began its transformation. Surveillance radar, signal amplification, magnetic field equipment, various cannons, and some weapons that the players had never seen before were all displayed in front of them. The energy center and experimental area were moved to the back, and some important resources and facilities were disassembled and placed in the core of the city for protection. Li Zijun, who was walking in the distance, looked at the transformed mechanical city with her mouth slightly open. She watched as the city of steel completed the transformation process and turned into a steel beast entrenched in the desert. General, the city of Mech is in chaos. Link heard the overwhelming clatter of metal and the sound of air pressure adjustment throughout the Gale Desert. His expression was calm. You transformed, right? This is its truly powerful battle form. Li Ziqi was stunned for a moment. While she was shocked, she was infected by Link's calmness. The general had already predicted the city's transformation, so he must have a solution. As the commander-in-chief of the troops in Shandu, I only need to dispatch them according to my own ideas. If there is a problem, the general will definitely give a warning. With Link's composure, Li Zijun's shock quickly subsided. She even became calm when giving orders to the 3 armies. But in reality, Link didn't have any elaborate plans. Although he had personally experienced the war between the Freedom Federation and the Machinery Faith in his previous life and had a basic grasp of the methods of the Machinery Palace, there were some things that couldn't be solved just by knowing. The reason Link had waited until the end of January to launch a full-scale attack was so that the city would be able to use up energy for winter while suffering heavy casualties. The battle at the Machinery Palace and the victory at Weeping Valley were enough to deal a huge blow to the Machinery Faith. The energy stored in the city would not be more than in his previous life. Against the most advanced technology on the wasteland planet, it would be difficult to overcome it with skill. Link could only reduce the opponent's trump cards and then directly suppress it with his own power. After the transformation, the city had transformed from a cold, mechanical city to a ferocious beast in the desert. Just the dozen large-caliber cannons at the edge of the formation were enough to make the players tremble in fear. After being hit by such a cannon, I'm afraid that even his corpse won't be left intact. Even the players of the Machinery Faith had never seen the second form of the city before, let alone the players of Shandu. At this moment, all the players turned around to look at the Machinery Palace, which was emitting a cold aura. The players from the Machinery Faith gradually smiled. Shapey, now you know how powerful our Machinery Faith is. Eat my cannon. Haha, the Machinery Faith is the most awesome. The players from the church were all extremely excited. On the other hand, the players of Shandu were all like frozen eggplants. Just then, someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, "Our main force has arrived." The players of Shandu looked back at the same time in unison. He saw the mighty Shandu army, which consisted of all kinds of mechanized and conventional troops, with a scale of 10,000 people. Jeeps, desert jeeps, armored vehicles, tanks, and military trucks were all covered in smoke. The Shandu players' originally stoic expressions suddenly changed as if they were in Sichuan opera, and they were overjoyed. Link's here. He definitely has a way to deal with this steel monster. I'm waiting for a wave of flying dragons to land on my face. I'll crush this bunch of players from the church. Following Li Zijun's orders, the troops got into formation. All the tanks and cannons were in formation. The soldiers on the military carts came down like dumplings in a pot. They were well equipped. Some of the weapons in the hands of the soldiers were dark blue energy tubes. These were mass-produced amplification weapons that had been modified. Link alighted from the armored vehicle and looked at the city. He couldn't help but tease, after 2 losses, the city looks deserted. Link entered the Heaven's Sun's insight mode. The city's energy was blue, and only the core of the city was releasing energy and radiation. The city was ready for war, ready to unleash its energy at any time. The sound of a mechanism being activated came from within the city. A moment later, the mechanical pioneers appeared on the protruding platform of the city. General Lin, we meet again. Link smiled at the mechanical pioneers, his face relaxed. Dr. Zhao, you've been looking good recently, Ying Luo. It seems that you didn't get cold this winter. Link's tone was sarcastic. You'd better think of a way to deal with your old acquaintance first. Dr. Zhao said and waved his hand. Another person slowly walked out from behind the platform. He was wearing a cloak that covered his face, and a mechanical right arm with a metallic luster could be clearly seen. Project X took off his linen cloak slowly. When his messy hair and young face appeared, everyone on the battlefield gasped in surprise. This is John. The #1 assassin on Wasteland Planet. Then, all the players turned around to see Link's expression. John was a legendary NPC and had a good relationship with Link. How did he end up in the other side's camp in the blink of an eye and even fight the players? After a brief moment of shock, Link's expression gradually relaxed. Then, he did something that surprised everyone. He took out his phone from his pocket and aimed it at John on the platform of the floating mech city. Click. He took a photo. Then, he lowered his head and typed something on his phone. Chapter 467. Have you seen the violent army style? Link, come, reminisce about your younger self, cricket, picture. Not long after Link sent the message, he received John's reply. It was 2 consecutive messages. John? John, I'll be right there. After reading the message, Link's lips curled up. All right, now that another strong helper had joined, the strong candidate to delay John was found. On the platform of the mech city, Professor Zhao was staring at Link's expression. When Link's first reaction was to show his surprise, Dr. Zhao's pleasure was indescribable. He had been tricked by Link twice, and now he finally saw Link suffer. However, this feeling of satisfaction only lasted for a moment. In the next second, Lin Kei's expression turned into one of gloating. He even took out his phone to take pictures and then lowered his head to type a message. Before she could feel any more pleasure, she was interrupted by Link's absurd action. Professor Zhao's brain was on fire. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't figure out why Link was so happy. Aren't you curious about my new capable general? Dr. Zhao asked in a condescending manner. He needed to talk more with Link to collect his psychological changes and logical trajectories. In the following battle, he could analyze his opponent's logical changes and guess the probability of his opponent's actions. This would help him predict his opponent's actions and be one step ahead of him. Link shrugged nonchalantly. The last time we sneaked into the floating mech city, John was injured and vomited some blood. You separated the DNA from the blood and then cloned a pirated version of him. What's so curious about that? Link's voice was loud and confident. It seemed like he was answering Professor Zhao's question, but he was actually speaking to the tens of thousands of players. When the players saw the young face of John, they were instantly flustered and lost their composure. The players finally came to a realization and understood the ins and outs of the matter. It turned out that the mechanical modified John in front of him was a clone cultivated by the pioneers of machinery using blood. He was a fake. Phew, it's good that it's not really John. If this goes on for a long time and John is on the machinery faith's side, my mentality will collapse. Although they're clones, their strength can't be underestimated. Killing us is as easy as killing pigs. Don't flatter yourself. You'll only be cutting our grass at most. You're not worthy of being a pig. The players talked to their friends in low voices, and their mood was much better than before. Dr. Zhao let out a mechanical chuckle. He had just received Link's message that another legendary would be on the battlefield soon. Even if you ask John to come, it won't help. Project X has been mechanically modified. He can do everything John can and can do whatever John can't. His strength has long surpassed his main body, so let him be the opening act of this war. Dr. Zhao slowly turned around and opened his arms. Enjoy this feast. After Professor Zhao left, the protruding platform of the mech city started to descend slowly. Project X looked at the weapons box beside him and picked up a sniper rifle. Lin Ke saw Project X's actions and had a bad feeling. He immediately snatched the sniper rifle from Li Zijun's hands. Under the high magnification lens, X was half squatting, using his metal right arm as a support, aiming the muzzle and grinning. The two of them saw each other through the scope of their respective sniper rifles. Bang! Bang! The two of them fired at the same time, and even their sounds overlapped. Project X's weapon box was specially equipped for him by Dr. Zhao. The technological weapons in it were completely different from the gunpowder weapons on the market. They were faster and more lethal. Usually, there were only parts in the weapon box, not complete firearms. Weapons with different effects could be assembled according to the environment and situation. The modular assembly in the weapon box could support a total of 137 different firearms. After the armor-piercing sniper bullet was accelerated by the electromagnetic coil, it left the chamber at a terrifying speed and drew a purple stream of light in the air. The sniper rifle in Link's hands was no ordinary weapon either. It was a high-end product that Helen had made for Li Zijun and a few other important military generals after she mastered the new energy weapon. It was like heaven and earth compared to the new energy weapons that the players used to practice. The gauze electric sniper rifle in Link's hand left a blue bullet mark in the air. Two streams of light approached from far away. The high-energy bullet and the armor-piercing bullet met in the air, erupting into a bright spot. The armor-piercing bullet was even more powerful. It pierced through the high-energy bullet in the explosion, and an even thinner bullet inside detached from the outer shell and continued flying in Link's direction. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of him. Clang! A crisp sound was heard as the bullet landed on a shield. The entire shield was silver in color and was formed by silver army ants and cobalt beetles. It bound copper wall iron sword. After catching the bullet, a small part of the silver metal back of the cobalt beetle had blackened and caved in. It fell off the shield and wriggled its butt into the sand to cool down. The shield instantly disintegrated, and the silver army ants and cobalt beetles retreated from behind Link, disappearing without a trace. When he looked at the landing platform again, Project X had disappeared without a trace. Link scanned the battlefield but did not see Project X. After returning the gauze sniper rifle to Li Zijun, Link said calmly, "Let's start organizing the attack." Li Zijun's expression was serious as if she was facing a great enemy. The appearance of John's Clone X had tilted the balance of the high-end combat forces on the battlefield. Tanks, cannons, prepare to fire. The entire row of tanks and cannons aimed at the floating mech city fired at the same time, and the powerful recoil caused dust and smoke to rise into the air. Boom! 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 The tank fire drew a parabola in the air and landed on the enemy camp, setting off an explosion. The Machinery Faith players, who had been happily watching the show just now, were now in a complete mess from the explosion. As the cannon approached the city, it exploded in the air. A transparent ripple appeared at the location of the explosion. The defensive force field of the city was activated. Compared to the large defensive force field in Sand City, the transparent force field in Sand City was more advanced in technology. It didn't look like it covered all directions, but more like a partial block after fire detection. Link activated the Heaven Sun's insight and could clearly see the defensive force field outside the city. The core was an energy transmitter located above the city. The energy was concentrated to capture all the threats and generate a protective force field to intercept them. The advantage of this kind of defensive force field was that it could save a lot of energy. After calculating the firepower density, defensive force fields of different thickness could be arranged, and at the same time, it would not affect the battle in other areas. The players from the church were all confused and disoriented by the explosion. Now that the players from Zhuge had the support of the army, they rushed forward like a swarm of bees. The battle had officially begun. A large number of mechanical spiders and small caterpillar track robots were released from the mech city. The spider robot was half a meter tall, and on the two sections of its disc-shaped body, there were assault weapons and howitzers. The caterpillar track robot carried a variety of weapons. Its main body was a light machine gun, and there were all kinds of strange firepower in the arsenal such as interference bombs, electromagnetic smoke, and blade bombs. Very quickly, the players were engaged in a battle with the various mechanical creations of the machinery faith, and the sounds of gunfire and explosions filled the sky. When the two sides exchanged blows, Li Zijun immediately commanded all the heavy firepower to hit the main point of the firepower and consume the energy of the machinery faith's protective shield. As long as he could break through the membrane of the machinery faith, he would be able to welcome the next stage of the battle. A rapid tearing sound came from the sky, and the Zhuge Air Force formation arrived on time. Due to the mistake of the previous ambush, the fighter jets didn't get too close to the city. After locking onto the target on the screen, they immediately launched the missiles and turned around, leaving a series of explosions in the city. At the same time, bombers had arrived above the city and dropped bombs like dumplings into a pot. Link had spent a lot of money to take down the city. As for the investment in this war, Link only had one sentence to say at all costs. The city was heavily guarded by the energy cannons. The sky was filled with flames and explosions. The air shook like thunder, and the dazzling light was as bright as the sun. There was very little cooperation between players on the battlefield, and their HP was not high. When fighting with the mechanical spiders and caterpillar track robots that had the ability to coordinate formation, they knew how to maximize efficiency. They quickly analyzed the situation at the front line, changed formations, and shifted positions. Moreover, as they were mechanical products, there were many of them, and the players of Sand City no longer had the advantage. However, there were still some bright spots on the battlefield. The players who bought pets from the Monster Security Company would use small pets like self-destructing flies and self-destructing mice to open up a new situation and deal a critical blow to the mechanical objects. Other than that, the other players who were alone could not even cause any substantial damage to the mechanical spiders and the caterpillar robots. Link's eyes darted around the battlefield, but he could not find Clone X. He patted Li Zijun's shoulder and said, "I'll be leaving first, be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, Link threw a ball of smoke into the ground. The smoke quickly dissipated, and Link was gone. Shadow Meld was one of the most famous ultimate skills of pugilist stalkers. It used smoke to force its way into a secondary space and stealth mode. After completing the Red Dragon Dweller's Camp quest, he would be given 2 skill books. One was the Pugilist's Muscle Bone Strengthening Scripture, and the other was the Pugilist's Rogue's Shadow Meld. After Lin Ke received the 2 books, he immediately learned them and maxed them out to level 10. After entering Shadow Meld, everything around him became dark, leaving only a world of black, white, and grey. He could also hear the whistling of secondary space turbulence. Link then activated the Heaven's Insight spell. In the dark secondary space, he saw a ball of red killing intent rapidly approaching. Link looked at Li Zijun, who was shouting at the top of her lungs to command the battlefield, and then at the rapidly approaching Scarlet Aura. He immediately understood her thoughts. Clone X had inherited John's concealment ability. As long as he didn't want to be discovered, he would never be discovered. In addition, the battlefield was now filled with smoke, chaos, and sand. Under such circumstances, unless he was willing to be discovered, it would be difficult for anyone to find him. X analyzed the situation on the battlefield. Other than Link, Li Zijun was the only one who had absolute command on the battlefield. As the saying went, to capture the bandits, first capture the king. As long as Li Zijun was taken care of, the Shandu army would have no one to command and would collapse without a fight. Li Zijun commanded calmly. As the situation on the battlefield stabilized, his command became more and more handy. The firepower of the Shandu Air Force was a great help to the frontal army, and the floating mech city had been in a passive state of defense until now. "Dave, get ready," he said. "I have a feeling that the mech city could turn from defense to attack at any time. By then, the lives of tens of thousands of our soldiers will all be in your hands." Li Ziqi was wearing a sound transmission bug as she spoke to Dave, who was in the control car at the army's center. Dave stared at all kinds of monitoring instruments, and at the same time, he looked at the front-line battlefield through the bulletproof glass from time to time. "Don't worry. In addition to the official plan, I have 2 emergency plans to ensure your safety. Don't worry, just charge. Leave your back to me." Just as Li Zijun was about to say something, she suddenly felt the surrounding air become sticky, and the air exuded a chill. Li Zijun had done a lot of research on killing aura. His famous unique skill, Military Killing Fist, used killing aura to strengthen himself. Now that this undisguised killing intent was coming at him, it instantly made his hair stand on end and a terrifying feeling surged. In a daze, Li Zijun seemed to see a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The Shitu army was covered in pale corpses, and the machinery faith was wreaking havoc. While he was in a daze, a thermal knife suddenly appeared in front of him. Die! There were no dazzling moves, and no long nonsense. That one word was full of killing intent, like a decree of death. Although Li Zijun was the king of soldiers in Shitu and also a leader level, she was still not enough in front of Clone X. Be it speed or reaction, he was suppressed in all aspects. "You wanted to touch him, but did you ask me?" A cold voice suddenly rang out in the air. The flash dagger and the heat blade collided, and sparks appeared, illuminating Link's face. He pushed Li Zijun away with his other hand and said with his head tilted, "Go to the side and give the command." Li Zijun was pushed away violently and tried to backflip. When she looked around, she could no longer see Link and Clone X. Li Ziqi composed herself and didn't turn to look around. She continued to focus on commanding the battle. Her words were sharp and her thoughts were clear. She had to cherish the precious opportunity that Link had fought for her and break through the first line of defense of the city as soon as possible. The corners of Clone X's lips curled up as he sneered at Link. "You've been tricked. Project X was only using Li Zijun to lure out the big fish, Link." From the beginning to the end, Link was his only target. His metal right arm popped out, and his palm retracted back into his arm. A cold, shiny dagger popped out. Clang! The dagger in his right arm collided with Throat Crusher, causing another spark. Link also smiled and whistled. He said the same thing, "You've also been tricked." As the order was given, the ground beside the city rumbled. The tentacle dragon god with its huge tentacles leaped out of the desert, drew a beautiful arc in the air, and then plunged into the desert beside it. It wagged its tail and disappeared. Link's pets swarmed out of a newly dug cave. Vajra was the first to rush out. His body was shimmering with golden light and surrounded by Sanskrit. Then, countless rats spread out like a black tide. It was too much for the eyes to take in, and it made people's scalps numb. Behind Rat, a thick grey fog gushed out of the cave and enveloped Rat, King Kong, and the others. It was a strange and dense fog. "You want to compete with me in numbers? You've never seen the brutal army style, have you?" Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 468. Link stared into X's eyes, but found that he didn't mean to turn his head at all. But soon, his words betrayed him. With these low-level structures, you want to attack the mechanic city. X's tone was contemptuous, and he didn't put these pets in his eyes. The human clone X, who was instilled in the clear-up agreement, subjectively or subconsciously, believes that machinery is the only development direction and is the most powerful and effective. Everything that goes against the clean-up agreement must be eradicated. Link reacted instantly. X's consciousness must be connected to the mechanic city, and the real-time data transmitted from the mechanic city without looking back gave an accurate grasp of the entire battlefield situation. If there are too many battles, the action will be recorded in the supercomputer in the machine city, which will be analyzed and predicted, and the cracking method will be proposed. So what Link has to do is to let his pets break through the defensive field as soon as possible, transfer the battlefield to fight with the mechanical pioneers, leave the battlefield here to King Kong and the Dragon God, and find a way to delay the pace of Clone X. The cloud of grey fog is advancing steadily, and the defensive force field of the mechanical city does not work from the side. Instead, all the diffuse grey fog is put into the defensive force field area. The players in Shadow were taken aback when they saw the grey fog. This grey mist is too familiar. Isn't this the grey mist in the Deathmire copy? Sure enough, Link went to Deathmire early and successfully obtained the core technology inside. Perhaps in the story of the dungeon, the boss thrown out by the players is stunned. Within a month, many players from the first group successfully attacked Deathmire, allowing players to know the whole story of the entire dungeon. The mechanical pioneer looked at the holographic image in front of him on the main console. He deliberately put Link's pets in, with the goal of being quick afterwards. The last time a few people sneaked into the mechanical city, those animals that did not know where they came from caused great damage to the mechanical city. He originally thought it was a team of professional agents who had destroyed the giant mechanical, but afterwards the mechanical pioneer called the video, and fell silent after watching it. No more, no less, 6 rats destroyed the laboratory in a nearly comical way, triggering a series of chain reactions, and finally even triggered an explosion, directly destroying the mechanical giant. Everyone in Link also took advantage of this opportunity to escape, otherwise it would be hard to say which one will win and which one will lose. And in the process, the rats also stole one of his collection's Goria Technologies mechanical power arm. It is for this reason that the mechanical pioneers recreated a metal robotic arm for Clone X. After seeing Link this time, he found that there were no pets around him, and the mechanical pioneer left his hand early. Now I see the pets come out and directly attack the mechanical city, first come to a circle, and then collectively kill. As long as these annoying freaks are solved, a Link plus a first killer John, the mechanical pioneers really don't care. Link saw the closed defensive force field, and suddenly realized something was wrong. There is still a chance to get distracted. Sorry, it's my fault. Damn it. The two were staggered, and Link's coat was slit. Your nano combat suit absorbs 303 points of damage and stores damage, 303/1650. But at the moment of staggering, Link's whistle arrow that was hidden in his sleeve flew out, turning into 3 silver lights and inserted into Clone X's back. But soon, Link's smile solidified. Because the 3 whistle arrows were 5 centimeters away from X's back, they couldn't go further, as if there was some barrier in the air. Link's sentry arrows were so sharp that they could penetrate even objects 1 or 2 meters thick. This has never happened before. X chuckled and jokingly said, "If it's still an old 3-handed axe, I advise you to give up your fantasy. I have already targeted and restrained your skills. Bring out some new ones, otherwise you can't get out of the Gale Desert today." As soon as the voice fell, X's mechanical right arm produced a strong electromagnetic force, and the generated repulsion directly sent the whistle arrow to the top. X's tone changed abruptly. Link knew that it was the mechanical pioneer Dr. Zhao who was using X's body to talk to him at the moment. Link disappeared from the spot quickly, and the staggered body appeared in front of X in the next second, and his throat shattered like lightning, and it passed through the neck of Clone X. Between the sparks and sparks, X's mechanical right arm was in front of his neck, the dagger rubbed against the metal, and sparks splashed everywhere. The mechanical arm was as smooth as new, and the dagger did not leave any wounds on the surface. That's it. Just as soon as the voice of X fell, his throat suddenly tightened, and Link shot a scarlet murderous intent in his eyes, went straight to the door of X, and instantly knocked Clone X several meters away. The Emperor's sighting aura technique controls the actual murderous aura, which can both assist and kill the enemy. Now, Link quickly closed the knife, the broken throat fell into the scabbard, and backhand took out the box pistol. Although the additional effect of shattered throat is strong, it is difficult to cause damage to the robotic arm due to insufficient quality and level. Now it can only be replaced with a magic box pistol that has a greater killing effect on the robotic arm. Link inflicted 180 damage on X and threw it for a detection. X. Race, Cyborg/Mechanical Modification. Level, LV50+, Legendary. Health value, 19820/20,000. Energy value, 3850/4000. Skills, Hand Knife, Swift Shadow Assault, Mechanical Strength Strengthening, Instant Body, Aiki/, Overclocking Computing, Other Unknowns. Specialty, Weapon Master, Mechanical Carrier, Midnight Ghost, Other Unknowns. Talent, Invisible Threat. Evaluation, the perfect combination of mechanical and biological engineering, the highest product of mechanical spiritual education technology. After reading X's data card, Link immediately had an urge to commit suicide. The butterfly effect produced by his own behavior not only allowed Mechanic City to recreate John's clone X, but also made this guy stronger than the savior of the previous life. As soon as he played, he was a level 50 legend. An assassin's blood volume was as thick as a blood cow, and his blood volume reached 20,000. Link is a 55 level leader, and his current HP is only 12,800. Even if the template gap between the legendary level and the leader level is less than 7,000. It can only be said that Dr. Zhao's transformation of Clone X is quite focused, and on the basis of modifying memory and subconscious procedures, it has been strengthened in all directions. He has a lot of blood and high attacks, and his skills have added a lot of mechanical skills on the basis of John, and his specialties and talents are also terrifying. X's talent Invisible Threat. When the target has no other friendly units within 50 meters, the damage taken is increased by 50%. Simply put, this is a very powerful solo talent. To be caught by Clone X alone would be dead. It is already a legendary level in itself, and the damage is increased by 50%. It is not that the gods block and kill the gods, the Buddha blocks and kill the Buddha. But after reading it, Link was not surprised but delighted. Because he discovered that the pet he was carrying would be regarded as a friendly unit by default. In other words, as long as he carries a whistle arrow or other pets made of silver wall ants, even a small ant, then X will never be able to trigger Invisible Threat on him. In the same way, as long as other friendly forces also carry small ants, no matter who X attacks, it is impossible to trigger Invisible Threat. This wave is called ultimate targeting. The knockback and attribute checking just now, as well as Link's various thoughts, all happened between the lightning and flint. After changing into the magic box pistol, Link immediately launched a round of shooting at X. At the same time, the sentry arrows that had just been bounced off attacked Clone X again from the blind spot behind the head, and the 3 sentry arrows scattered, located on the 3 routes that X might avoid. The dozen bullets of the magic box pistol burst out like a torrential rain, and the 11th element bullet happened to randomly hit the poisonous fog. The poisonous mist rushed toward the face with bullets wrapped in it. X moves quickly, getting up and quickly avoiding the range attack, but the whistle arrow behind him is caught off guard behind his neck. A huge -577 crit number appeared in X's forehead. Link took advantage of X's dodge, entered the swarm commander state, and began to pay attention to the pet's situation. Dr. Zhao was about to catch turtles in an urn, and after putting the grey fog into the defense force field of Mechanic City, several artillery of Mechanic City began to turn their muzzles to aim at the fast-running grey fog. The artillery of the Machine City is not like the water gun technology of Shadow. Every shot can be done without destroying the world and destroying the earth. Grace, hurry! The Machine City cannon is aimed at you. Link used the Swarm Commander talent to control King Kong and said to Grace, the Lord of the Mist, the Harpy. Grace burst into feathers all over her body. I already feel it. His eyes resembled lightning, and there was an electric arc faintly flashing in the entire grey mist, like a dragon. In the next second, the shells above the mechanical city passed through the coils to increase energy. Several thick burning laser cannons blasted on the grey fog. The dazzling and hot laser melted the sand into diamonds, and the temperature was so high that the surrounding air began to rise and evaporate. There are some God-teaching players, mechanical spiders or crawler robots nearby, which are directly vaporized and evaporated, leaving no metal residue. After a few laser beams dissipated, only a dazzling diamond particle remained on the sand. But the whole piece of grey fog appeared tens of meters away, almost close to the position below the mechanical city. Grace used her consciousness to spread all over the grey mist and activated the psychic transmission ability to directly transmit a large-scale mass transmission to the grey mist and the creatures in it, avoiding the deadly attack. Just as Link lost his mind in the two-line operation, X, who fell on the ground like a ghost, suddenly launched a shadow assault on Link. The mechanical arm activated the power burst, the power attribute surged by 100%, and moved towards Link, a punch in the chest. The terrifying fist was concentrated on Link's chest. The nano-combat uniform resisted most of the damage for Link, and it was fully loaded in an instant. All the remaining damage penetrated into the skin and muscles, and Link even felt a bone crack in his ribs, with a slight click. Fighting with me, there is still time to care about other places, looking for death. X just wanted to charge up for the second serve. Link gritted his teeth and directly released all the 1,650 points of damage accumulated in the nano-combat suit, setting off a repulsive shock wave around his body, and the air blast sent the unpredictable X directly flying out, and in turn, set off countless dust and sand. The dust was flying, and the huge shock wave turned this area within 100 meters into the center of the sandstorm. The sky slowly heard the hum of the Black Falcon transport helicopter propeller, and then Link heard the sound of the parachute opening and falling. Okay, let me take care of this person. The dust dissipated, and he combed his hair and sprayed his hair carefully. John appeared in a suit and leather shoes. His face and beard were also repaired, with edges and corners visible. As if to prove, John cleaned up from head to toe today, even wearing a watch. If you want to describe it in 4 words, then it's, dress up. Link laughed, watching John's childish behavior, not knowing what to say. This dress actually has the yuppie style of nasty old men. John stretched out his hands and slowly stroked his temples, pretending to be handsome. How about this look? Is it more handsome than the one in your photo? After seeing the photos Link sent, John immediately understood the reason. Link said before that in another timeline without him, he broke into the Mechanic City alone because he saved his wife Martha, and was beaten to death by mechanic pioneer Dr. Zhao. Mechanic sect used his DNA to clone another oneself. The memory has been modified to be perfused with the extreme thoughts of the mechanical gods, helping the gang to abuse. I thought that the appearance of Link would change this process, but I didn't expect that the other self would still appear. John immediately thought that he must have sneaked into the mechanical city. In order to avoid the death ray, he forcibly used instantaneous to avoid it, causing his organs to be injured and bloody. Not surprisingly, the mechanical pioneer still collected his own blood and internal organ fragments, relied on extracting DNA to clone, and then compiled and modified the genetic information level ability. John came this time to face himself. Clone X frowned slightly after seeing John, and showed a puzzled expression for the first time. He couldn't figure out why there would be someone exactly like him. For an instant, X had a doubt about his life. But the purge agreement, which was compiled in the lowest level of consciousness, immediately intervened and forcibly suppressed X's doubts. Clone X holds his head in pain, and his expression is distorted. But after a few seconds, his expression was frozen, his eyes were cold, and he repeated a sentence like mechanically, "Non-mechanical creations, all need to be eradicated. Implement the clean-up agreement order, and the unit will be erased." Feeling a terrifying murderous aura, John turned his head and said to Link, "Leave it to me here. Go and face the Pioneer Fu machinery." Link patted John on the shoulder. John felt a silver marching ant entering his clothes and frowned slightly. "Don't think about it, it's good for you." Link finished speaking and left. X burst into shape and said to himself again, "Target number 1 is escaping, intercept." Suddenly, John stood in front of X, and a knife pressed against Clone X's robotic arm. "Your opponent is me." Link got away temporarily, watching the chaotic battlefield, the smoke filled with gunpowder. Because of the protection of the defensive field, all the mechanical units, the cult players, and the cult fighting power under the mechanical city all turned around and attacked the pet army. Link tapped the sound bug in his ear. "Helen, take Lao Tzu's idiot cannon. Bring out the energy cannon you developed, and give me the defensive field of mechanical god at all costs." Helen, who was in the control vehicle of the Chinese army, was extremely excited and immediately executed the order. Wow! The rear roof of a military vehicle was completely opened. www.mtlnovel.com to reveal the cluster energy cannon inside. Helen sat on the side console, operating quickly, adjusting the angle and direction of the energy cannon. "Dr. Helen, how much ammunition do we want to load?" The staff of the Underground Research Center accompanying him asked. Helen for a long time, since it is the first shot, let's give Mechanic City an appetizer, 10 times the regular capacity. The accompanying staff immediately stuttered, and the whole person was dumbfounded. 10 times? Also, regular capacity. Helen took it for granted, the general said, at all costs. Relative to our inventory, 10 times the regular capacity, right? What's more, 5 times the capacity is enough to kill the Tree Nyoxi or the entire Shenmue city. It is certainly not much to deal with 10 times the capacity of Machinery City, right? The staff wanted to say something. Helen shook his hand impatiently. "Just do what I said, speed." The staff was sweating. The idea of this new doctor is dangerous. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 469. The staff skillfully put 10 times the capacity of the mixture of cobalt iron ore and cat's crystal into the tokamak reactor. The staff's hands were shaking during the filling process. With energy of this scale, a single shot can bomb Shenmue City and the Shen Tree Nyoxi together. And many more. When did Shenmue City and Shen Tree Nyoxi become the destruction measurement unit of the energy cannon? Helen's eyes were piercing, and his eyes locked on the transparent defensive field of the Mechanic City in the distance. The slender fingers are so fast, the parameters are ready, the blue light emerges in the reactor, the cobalt iron ore has reacted with the cat's crystal, and the energy is temporarily accumulated through the incremental expansion of the container, just waiting to be ready to go a shot. At the same time, in the core control room of Mechanical City, the system issued a prompt. Detected strong energy signal fluctuations, level, extremely dangerous. The holographic screen quickly marked the point where the energy radiation surged, and the energy cannon modified by the military truck came into view with the ultra-long lens. Dr. Zhao stared at the holographic screen, and didn't realize it until this moment. With the rapid development of science and technology in Shadow, various large defensive force fields and small energy weapons are emerging endlessly. It turns out that there are experts behind them. The mechanic who sneaked into the Mechanic City last time, Dr. Zhao, has studied the composition of his mecha. Although there are many spiritual creations, his talent and strength are at the level of the Elder of the Iron Council. He will never have such ability. Dr. Zhao stared at the holographic screen, and data consciousness was connected to the mechanical city. Next, he will use a series of complicated operations to completely eliminate the threat of energy cannons that are being stored. There are many crisscrossing tracks on the outer surface of the mechanical city. These tracks were originally the transportation lines inside the mechanical city, but in the war mode, these things are the key hubs for the movement of firepower. A magnetic rail gun rose from the inside of the mechanical city and fixed it on the track with a click. Immediately afterwards, the railgun moved from above the machine city along the track, avoiding the high-density fire area. Once the defensive field here is removed, the mechanic city will be attacked by Shadow's fierce fire. The magnetic track moves to a low-density area where the frontal firepower is sparse, where even if the defensive field is removed later, the damage suffered is still the machine city can withstand. The railgun began to accumulate energy, and the barrel gradually heated up under the single coil heating. Swish! The moment the shells were fired, the defensive field in the low-density fire zone was withdrawn, and the electromagnetically accelerated shells flew towards the modified military trucks of the Shadow Army's central formation like a beaded cannon. In order to launch the magnetic track, the machine city removed a part of the defensive force field. At the moment the shells were ejected quickly, the machine city also suffered a lot of firepower. The explosion, fire, and smoke were intertwined. City, the body was damaged for the first time. The defensive force field was re-blessed, and the flame at the location of the explosion was quickly extinguished. The smoke dissipated, the state of the explosion was terrifying, and the metal was twisted and deformed, revealing broken lines. The defensive force field of Mechanic City can be adjusted at any time by monitoring the enemy's firepower to adjust the size and density. It seems extremely intelligent, but the defensive force field projected by the energy transmitter is not without flaws. Because the number of small energy tubes integrated in the launcher is limited, and the current technology cannot expand its capacity, the Mechanic City can only take the approach of cancelling the defensive force field and making way for the railgun. The current damage is within Dr. Zhao's acceptance range. At such a price, the most threatening energy cannon is eliminated. This is the optimal solution obtained after calculation. But at this moment, a blue energy shield suddenly appeared in the army formation of the Shadow Army. The kinetic energy shells accelerated by the railgun all landed on the energy shield, and the shock waves caused by the continuous explosion even made the holographic image tremble violently. Dr. Zhao clenched his fists. He knew this blue energy cover very well, and it was the large defensive force field that was responsible for the defeat of the Desert Allied forces last time. Sure enough, I still underestimate this mechanic, who can create energy cannons and can also create a large mobile defense field. Under Dr. Zhao's iron blue skull helmet, his eyes flashed with rich purple light. Moving large defensive force field, I want to see how much energy supply you have. Dr. Zhao hurriedly dispatched from the console. This time he adjusted 5 magnetic railguns, and the coils were increased to full capacity, and he tried to directly destroy the defensive field of the Sandu army with one blow. Both sides opened the defensive field and entered the confrontation mode. The hollow zone where the defensive force field could not be wrapped became the Shura field, and there were 2 legendary level fellows, John and Clone X. Helen, who was a few kilometers away, saw Mechanic City's rail artillery eagerly, and the number increased from 1 to 5. Tap the voice worm in your ears and talk to Grandpa Dave, who is at the forefront of the Legion. Grandpa, I have sent you the coordinate information. Give me an opening here. The General orders you to fire support. When Dave saw the information coordinates, he immediately started to control, preset the parameters, and asked casually, is it a first-order energy gun? No, 10th order. Dave was dumbfounded, his hand shook involuntarily, and he immediately filled his caliber and value. Synergy is ready. After you press the bombardment key, I will withdraw the protective cover of the corresponding coordinate to the thinnest state at the same time, and the rest is up to you. Before Dave's words fell, he suddenly felt an extremely strong azure blue energy beam above his head, flying straight to the defensive field in front of him. The density of the defensive force field at the bombardment point was modified to the minimum, and an extremely thin place resembling a hole appeared. The energy bombardment penetrated easily and suddenly landed on the transparent energy field of the mechanical city. Immediately afterwards, orange cracks began to appear on the edge of the defensive force field on the surface of the mechanical city. The Tier 10 energy cannon is powerful and long-lasting, and even the air above the army becomes anxious, and the heat waves are tumbling. The defensive force field of the mechanic city was in danger at this time, with more and more orange-red cracks, as if it was about to collapse every moment. Dr. Zhao's whole body was dumbfounded. The energy level of the energy cannon was extremely high. The energy of the rail cannon that was originally intended to bombard the defensive force field of the Shadow Army was completely removed, and all energy was used to counter this ultimate energy cannon. Crazy man, crazy man! Doesn't this guy know that an ordinary modified military truck can't carry this level of energy at all? Dr. Zhao didn't expect that he would go directly to Tier 10 energy when he met him. What is the difference between throwing bombs and Daodazu? He can only bet that Tier 10 energy won't last for too long, and that the opponent's energy cannon cannot be modified to withstand such terrifying energy. Link came to the bottom of the mechanical city defensive force field, taking advantage of John's delay in Clone X's efforts. He made a lot of knives on the battlefield, and used the Emperor's Eyes art to absorb 10 layers of blood fury. The energy cannon bombarded the defensive force field, emitting a buzzing sound of energy shock, and at the same time, the heat wave spewed, the hot air formed a rising air current, and the gun smoke swept through. Link immediately communicated with Li Ziqian, let all the firepower be evenly distributed, and carry out a carpet bombing of the mechanical city. Li Ziqian knew immediately. After a few seconds, all the firepower fell evenly on the defensive field, forcing the mechanic city to expand the defensive area, making the already small energy worse. The operation of the mechanic city was obviously impatient, and while struggling to resist the energy cannon, the other side was still adjusting the fire trajectory, trying to kill the grey fog. There are more and more cracks in the defensive field, and it is crumbling. At this moment, the energy cannon with a diameter of 5 meters broke and the energy disappeared. In the mechanical city defensive field, a hot scar that is difficult to heal was left. In the middle army position, a plume of black smoke can be seen to the naked eye. This is a modified military truck that cannot withstand the power of the energy cannon and is directly burnt and melted. General, I'm fine, now it's just the last blow. Helen's excited voice resounded from the sound bug in Link's ear. Another round of the Shadow Army's salvo, the shells fell on the defensive field of Mechanical City, and finally overwhelmed. The transparent defensive field was ignited, burning with red flames, disintegrating like ashes. Link jumped into the Machine City range and went straight to the grey mist. The Mechanical City energy is not exhausted, but the defensive energy set by Dr. Zhao is so much. If all energy is invested in defense, the possibility of offense is lost. Without this part of the energy now, today's situation will not be a situation of losing or retreating. Between Mechanic Cult and Shadow, one must disappear from the waste Saturn. Dr. Zhao has adjusted the active offensive authority to the highest level. From now on, the intelligent program will take over all offensive weapons in Mechanic City and completely let go of it. And Dr. Zhao himself is going to find Link for a fateful battle that was unfinished 3 months ago. Various weapons of the Mechanic City were transported to orbit, and intensive firepower strafed the battlefield. At the same time, various artillery at the forefront of the Shadow Army were bombarded. The appearance of Link broke the grey fog surrounded by mechanical spiders and mechanical crawler vehicles with his own power. An electronic pulse bomb directly caused silence under the Mechanical City, and the mechanical spiders and crawler vehicles were paralyzed by electricity. The front of the Machine City creaked, and soon countless iron doors were opened on the side, and it fell to the ground. The mechanical warriors, apostles, and elders of the Iron Council all came out. The grey mist dissipated, and Grace Harpy, wearing a special respirator, frowned slightly, you didn't tell me that there are so many inanimate robots in the mechanical god. As long as she has vital signs, Grace can invade with grey mist. But when she first appeared, Grace felt helpless when faced with an unknown number of mechanical spiders and crawler robots. Your own harpy is tantamount to hitting a rock with an egg. The unintentional and the puppet army are slow to move, and they can't use any strength to face the mechanical spider. For the first time, Grace played as Link's Mist Manor, and as a result, she encountered a difficult enemy. She took Link's various pets and hid in the grey mist. Grace was holding a fire in her chest at this moment. Link looked at the elite mechanical gods who were dispatched from the nest, and said slowly, "Now, the enemy you want is here." Then Link walked to King Kong, "Send me a ride." The Diamond Heart understands, and without a word, opens Arhut's fury, and his body grows by tens of meters. In the next second, King Kong charged up and threw Link directly into the mechanical city. Link launched a multifunctional combat suit, turned on the flight suit mode, and quickly approached the core mechanical giant in the center of the machine city at low altitude. Grace, the Banshee King, glanced back at the elites of mechanical god cult. At this time, they had already handed over with Link's pet. The treasure hunter and the rat special agents, commanding the Kuroshio of the rats, did not stop too much, but went straight into the mechanic city and started destroying them. Because of the tragic experience last time, Mechanic City has already prepared many anti-rat measures. After detecting that there is a mouse entering the pipeline and line, the poison gas is sprayed as soon as possible. Many rats suffocated to death after entering the pipeline, but many self-destructed rats caused explosions after their deaths, causing part of the mechanical city's lines to become paralyzed. The 5 guys of the mouse agent team took out the prepared special disinfection masks early and continued to destroy them. After King Kong's transformation, he directly approached an elder of the Iron Council who was driving a mecha. Both of them were tens of meters in shape. When they saw every move, the explosion and the light of Buddha flew together. The silver metal ocean composed of hundreds of thousands of silver marching ants is the most feared by the elites of the mechanical gods. Many mechanical warriors who did not master the repulsive force of the magnetic field became the gluttonous delicacy of the silver marching ants, instantly devoid of flesh and blood and metal. Mechanical apostles and mechanical elders can only be forced to continuously turn on electromagnetic repulsion to isolate these tiny terrorist creatures from the magnetic field protection circle. Link's other veteran pets also perform their own functions. The Hellhound opens flame form, the Sand Sculpture family creates various obstacles for the enemy at low altitude, the Rubber Python skin moves, and constantly consumes the enemy's ammunition and patience. The Obsidian Pioneer is unscrupulous. The Big Pliers open the way while the crystals are broken. Surrounding enemies cause group damage. The Four-Headed Gargoyle pierced into crowded places, Terror Scream, Crowd Taunt, War Wind, one click for 3 consecutive times, after the fight, directly enter the stone statue form, and turn on the wretched recovery mode. In addition, 3 new pets under Link's command debut for the first time. The undead moved slowly, staring at those mechanical warriors who had been beaten to residual blood and entangled in psychedelic vines. The mechanical warrior's ammunition poured out, but it was unable to stop the undead, a slow and desperate process. When the undead walked in front of him, he ate the last blood volume with a bite. The blood of the mechanical warrior faded, and his whole body spasmed and trembled quickly, and he was transformed into the same kind. 30 mummies wrapped in bandages are also a special sight on the battlefield. Although the action is awkward and slow, only to find the right opportunity to use the bandage wrap, you can restrain all the surrounding 5 enemies and pull them in front of you. Many mechanical warriors and apostles were dragged in front of the mummies without understanding or carelessness, and then turned on the state of dead man, losing blood every second. A single mummy is so terrifying. 30 mummies disperse their actions, resulting in a wider range of restraints. The last guardian of the eagle enters the field directly to open Horus's fury, incarnate as a in the desert myth, and summon the dead mechanical apostle to resurrect www.mtlnovel.com to fight again. Grace, the Banshee King, turned into a grey mist and rushed directly into the crowd with the grey mist. The mechanical elites are not purely mechanical structures, but humans as the main body. After entering the grey fog, they are highly poisonous and suffocated. They moved, and the fog moved with them, and couldn't get out. In desperation, he arbitrarily opened fire in the grey mist, and shot many of his own people. Just as Grace was violently killing her, a fierce suction appeared, drawing the grey mist towards the other end. Grace looked at the 2-meter or so armored mecha in front of him, which was airtight. There is strong suction at the wrist of the robot, and a transparent container is carried on the back of the mecha, and a lot of grey mist can be seen inside. Grace returned to her real body, her eyes sharp and murderous. Do you also think of dancing? Chapter 470 The Trump Card of the Mechanical Pioneers. Grace flapped her wings, and her face turned ferocious. A sharp shock wave swept across the sky. The kinetic strike and mental shock caused the elder pilot in the mecha to fall into a trance for a moment. In the next second, Grace pounced on the mech and rode on it without any manners. Her powerful eagle claws violently tore off the mech's mask, causing sparks to fly and sizzling electricity to leak out. Look straight at me, you little bastard! Grace's pupils contracted sharply and became vertical. The panicking elder of the Iron Council couldn't look away from the other party's eyes. It was as if he had fallen into quicksand and couldn't extricate himself. The city's defensive force field was broken, signaling the start of the attack. Under Li Zijun's command, the Sand City also removed its defensive force field and began to fire at the floating mech city. The main battlefield was even more brutal. Large numbers of soldiers from both sides appeared on the battlefield, and their weapons clashed. At this time, the function of the Machinery Faith's underground bunker was finally shown. The powerful firepower network made it difficult for the army to resist, forcing most of the enemies out of the firepower network. Only Link's pets, the Queen of Banshees Grace, and her puppet army were fighting within the city. Although they were very strong, they could not withstand a large number of mechanical elites. In the bunker, the fire of the machine guns lasted for a long time. Even though the zealots had put on protective ear shields, they still felt deafening. Captain, this time the big bug won't directly pierce through our bunker, right? A zealot's eyes flickered. He had experienced Link's last night attack on the city. The huge and terrifying bug had destroyed the defensive line of the bunker they were so proud of in a few breaths. Thinking about it still made him shudder. The team leader of the zealots said confidently, "Don't worry. After the previous failure, the pioneers have already ordered people to reinforce the underground. There's a 3-meter thick alloy steel plate under our feet, and the lower end has a pointed design. It's equipped with a shock reduction layer and a honeycomb support layer, which can resist impact." The zealot captain's lips curled up like a dragon king. "This time, I really hope that the big insect can crash into it and make its head bleed." The bunker was filled with laughter. The machine gun's flames were like dragons, and the barrel was red. Through the observation tank in the bunker, they could see the Shitu army trying to advance against the dense fire net in the distance. It felt like they were moving forward in a blizzard. The ones who seemed to control everything were the zealots who were shooting in the bunker. Just as they were easily intercepting the enemy, the bunker under their feet made a slight rustling sound. Soon, small cracks appeared on the concrete bunker, which continued to grow. It was too late when they discovered the gap in the bunker. The illusionary vine emerged from the gap and tightly bound the zealot in the bunker. There were even some illusion vines that twisted around their bodies and climbed onto the machine guns. They twisted their bodies to change the direction of the machine guns, not caring about the hot and red muzzles at all. The vines wrapped around the gun's muzzle and sizzled as they were roasted. After adjusting the direction of the muzzle with great effort, the illusionary vine released its charred body and passed through the trigger. Its body contracted and tightened, and the muzzle spat out raging flames again. This time, however, the target was a nearby bunker. Bullets rained down on the bunker, and concrete fragments flew everywhere. The zealot in the bunker cursed anxiously, "Mother Faster, do you have eyes, where are you shooting at?" But soon, screams came from the bunker, which were quickly drowned out by the intense gunfire. Although the mechanical pioneers had built a lot of defensive barriers underground to deal with the tentacles dragon's surprise attack, it was clear that Professor Zhao had underestimated Link. Link's pets weren't just the tentacles dragon and the rat. The cobalt beetles were entrenched underground, gnawing and rolling the metal that had been made with a huge sum of money into metal balls, then lining up to transport them to the red dragon dagger. With the hard work of the cobalt beetles, they quickly dug through the metal layer and the concrete below the bunker, followed by the illusion vines sending warmth into the house and performing a binding play. The expensive underground fire network was like a busy city with a sudden power outage. One by one, it went out and stopped working. The dense net of firepower crisscrossed and shot at each other, greatly reducing the pressure on the Shudu army. The horn of charge sounded, and the morale of the Shudu soldiers increased greatly. They charged forward and engaged the mechanical army in close combat. Link stood in the floating mech city. The battle below was intense. Explosions, gunshots, and shouts never stopped. Fire and smoke filled the sky. However, as the voice became clearer, Link's lips curled up in a sneer. "It seems that the mechanical pioneers are nothing more than this. Didn't you do your homework after our last fight?" The sound was getting closer, indicating that the fortress defense line had failed, and the two armies had begun a large-scale battle. Explosions could be heard from time to time in the city. The Rat Secret Service team, self-destructing rats, and Black Tide under the leadership of treasure-hunting rat cleared mines and destroyed various central pipes in the city. The mechanical skeleton's helmet was ashen, but Link could almost see its dark expression through the helmet. "You'll know very soon whether I've made preparations or not." Without saying much, the mechanical pioneer floated in the air with the help of magnetic forces. With a wave of his hand, a lot of steel around him moved strangely, and a dozen dazzling weapons rose up. Those who did not know would think that there was an arms exhibition here. The steel throne floated over, and the mechanical pioneers sat on it. More than a dozen weapons were controlled by the data mind, moving quickly on the rails. It was dazzling. Link tapped the sound bug in his ear and said to Benjamin, "Now, it's time to move out." As soon as he finished speaking, an electromagnetic cannon filled with electric energy shot towards Link. This cannonball was like a gun. The other cannons were all activated, either firing or focusing on Link. Link immediately activated haste, doubling his speed. He dodged with his flash dagger. There were tracks all over the city, so the cannons would follow Link wherever he went. What was even more infuriating was that the city had entered war mode and was completely sealed off. Although there were uneven spots, these spots also had tracks, and none of them could be used as a cover. It wasn't that Link didn't think of using his flash dagger to get close and destroy the cannons. However, the cannon was covered in shock electricity. Once Link used his flash dagger to get close, the shock electricity outside the cannon would take effect. Anyone who got close would be burned by the electricity and enter a stun state. Link had used a flash dagger and a magic box pistol, continuously using the armor-piercing bullets of the magic box pistol to deplete the cannon's durability. The mechanical pioneer sat on the Iron Throne and floated in the air. He had analyzed the battle records with Link more than 100 times. There were two things about Link that were difficult to deal with. The first was to simulate the opponent's skills, and the strength of the skills could even surpass that of the original. The second point was to absorb the essence of the undead and use it for one's own use, improving one's strength in all aspects. As long as these two problems were solved, Link's arms would be broken. This time, the mechanical pioneers used their advantage as a mechanic to control the city's weapons and compile all sorts of programs to deal with Link. If she did, Link would have a chance to imitate her and be at a disadvantage. As for the second point, the mechanical pioneers had only sent out mechanical creations at the start, leaving the elites as last as possible. As long as Link was in the city, he would be able to restrict Link's movements and prevent him from coming into contact with the dead. Although Link had already blown up 2 cannons with his magic box pistol, there were plenty of such cannons in the city. Professor Zhao raised his hands and 2 more cannons rose from the hub below the city. Dr. Zhao looked down at Link, who was struggling in the cannon formation, as if he was looking at an ant. Your struggle is doomed to be in vain. I've already seen through all your weaknesses. Embrace your fate. Through my transformation, achieve eternal life. You will become a killing machine no less than Project X, paving the way for the grand ideal of the church. Dr. Zhao's voice resounded in the air above floating Mech City. He spoke of his great dream in a calm tone. When the members fighting below heard this sound, their faces instantly changed, and they had a bad feeling. If the mechanical pioneers could slowly persuade them to surrender, didn't that mean that Link was in danger? For a moment, the Shudu army was in a panic. Link was the leader and pillar of the entire Sand City. If anything happened to him, they would lose the war without a doubt. Just as everyone was lost in their own thoughts, Link's confident voice rang out from the city. The god of the underworld sent me a dream, saying that the system for ferrying the undead to the underworld has recently malfunctioned, and they need a talent who is proficient in programming. Not only would he be able to display his strength, but he would also be valued by the gods of the netherworld, so why not? Don't worry about the city. What's yours is mine, and I'll definitely find a suitable successor to carry forward the machinery concept. Link started off with a long speech, and the pioneer of machines was stunned. Even the people from both sides of the battle were shocked by Link's words. The whole story was so realistic that they didn't know if this respected leader of Shudu was just joking or not. As Link spoke, he activated haste again. This time, he was as fast as a ghost, heading straight for the cannons. Putting away the magic box pistol, Link flicked the air blade that Helen had made from his wrist. The Armor Nemesis special effect of the Chi blade could cause 200% damage to all kinds of armor and armor. At the same time, the Chi blade would cause an additional 50 points of high-energy particle burning damage when attacking, so cutting alloy was not a problem. These carefully crafted cannons were instantly destroyed by Link's powerful attacks, turning into a pile of scrap metal. The mechanical pioneer's expression remained the same as he continued to awaken the underground cannon. Very good, I've forced you to use another trump card. I hope that you can still be strong in the future. Before the mechanical pioneer could finish his sentence, the cannons that rose from below the city were all crooked and drooped. They were all damaged, and some of them were even sizzling. What was even more infuriating was that a few rats wearing gas masks jumped down from the damaged cannons and high-fived each other in celebration. The mechanical pioneers continued to try to raise the cannons from below, but most of the cannons were destroyed. The entire lower storage room was in ruins and chaos. While the mechanical pioneer was still in a daze, Link grabbed the 5 fat rats and threw a cloud of smoke at them, disappearing without a trace. The mechanical pioneer came back to its senses and used all kinds of equipment to search for Link's location, but it found nothing. The max-level shadow meld allowed him to enter a secondary space. With the technology of the mechanical pioneers, they could only determine Link's location through vital signs and various environmental variables. Naturally, they could not detect Link. Only the spiritual-type powerhouses who were good at perception could capture the information fragments that were everywhere in the dimensional space. For a boss like the mechanical pioneer who was skilled in both mechanics and telekinesis, Link would not be able to detect it unless he was within 2 meters of it. This was the power of a level 10 shadow meld. As the most iconic skill of a rogue, it would only undergo a qualitative change when it reached level 10. It would change from a simple camouflage and light blurring technique to a true divine skill. Of course, the secondary space only isolated most of the senses, but it was still unavoidable for all kinds of energy damage. Therefore, as long as there was an AoE skill with a large enough area of effect, Shadow Meld could be forced out of the secondary space's turbulence. The mechanical pioneers returned to the ground on the Iron Throne, and Plan 1 was declared a failure. Link had disappeared into the shadows, and hundreds of cannons that had been specially built to deal with him had been destroyed. The machinery faith's situation on the battlefield was not optimistic. Originally, the church's elites were definitely better in terms of quality. However, due to the interference of Link's various pets, the mobility and combat power of the elites were greatly limited. All kinds of strange pets emerged one after another, and their destructive power was also shocking. During this time, the mechanical pioneers felt that 2 of their council elders had died. On the contrary, the Sand City's momentum was at its peak. Whether it was artillery or soldiers, they had the advantage. Being unable to use his own skills became the shackles that bound the pioneers of machinery. Link could simulate all kinds of skills, including the death ray that the pioneers of machinery were so proud of. Moreover, Link was brave enough to fight him one-on-one. The pioneers of machinery did not dare to take the risk. Perhaps Link's strength had improved over the past 3 months. If the mechanical pioneers were at a disadvantage in this battle of death rays, the entire city would be destroyed. After considering for a moment, the mechanical pioneer made up his mind. I can only use this move. Professor Zhao stood on the Iron Throne. An elevator appeared below him, and he slowly descended. Suddenly, he saw a sandstorm coming from the side of the city. Dr. Zhao stopped the elevator and looked into the distance. He quickly recognized the raging sandstorm. It was the 300 wolf riders that struck fear into the hearts of people in the desert. If they were to charge from the side, this number of cavalry would be enough to tear apart the entire defense line. Dr. Zhao finally felt anxious. It was a 1v1 battle between him and Link, but if the church's elites suffered heavy losses, he would be focused on. The elevator platform continued to descend, and the Iron Throne under Dr. Zhao's feet quickly disassembled, turning from a disc into a real throne. The moment Professor Zhao sat down, a dark shadow appeared behind him. The next second, Link appeared. The chi blade in his hand spewed out a torrent of high-energy particles and plunged straight into Dr. Zhao's back.